like to call this meeting of the Town Council for May 27th to order, please. If you would please rise and join us in the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you very much, and welcome. Welcome, Andy, to your second meeting. So we did the pledge announcements. By way of announcements, we have upcoming town council meetings. Friday, June 7th? 5th? 4th? 4th. Friday, June 4th. From 9 a.m. to 4 p.m., the town council retreat goal session is going to be held at Buckley's Great Steaks in the upstairs room, or?
Correct. We're in the upstairs room.
Located at 438 DW Highway. This has become an annual affair that we've been doing to just have a chance to, as a council, go through and talk about a lot of the issues that are going on in town, things that we see as concerns or that we want to try to address throughout the upcoming year. Thursday, June 10th, is a regular council meeting at 7 o'clock here, and Thursday, June 24th, is also a regular council meeting. Paul, did you have anything else?
Yes, I do. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Property tax bills were mailed on May 26th and are due by July 1st. Everybody should be receiving them. I received mine today in the mail, so you'll be getting them in the next couple of days. If you do not get your property tax bills by Saturday, please contact the tax collector to get your bill mailed out to you. Merrimack TV is now available to stream on Amazon Fire TV devices via the ScreenWeave app. Residents can live stream our public education and governmental channels 24/7 and watch on-demand programming using any device in the Amazon Fire TV family, including the Fire Stick. There is no cost to download ScreenWeave to your Amazon Fire TV device. Merrimack TV has been available on Roku and Apple TV devices since December 2020 via ScreenWeave. We are excited to add Fire TV as a way to watch local live coverage on the on-demand content. If you have any questions, please call the town's media division at 603-423-8561, or you can email them at merrimacktv@merrimacknh.gov. Thank you.
Thank you, Paul. At this point is comments from the press and public. If anybody wants to address the council at this time, we have a 3-minute period here where you can do that. Please come up to the mic, state your name and address. Or go up to that mic. Either one works. So, seeing no one, we'll move on. We have no recognitions, resignations, or retirements tonight, or appointments for tonight. A public hearing. We do have a public hearing scheduled for the acceptance and expenditure of FEMA funds, submitted by Town Manager Paul McCallie and Finance Director Tom Boland. The Town Council will hold a public hearing to authorize the acceptance and expenditure of up to $255,347.77, made available through the Federal Emergency Management Agency, FEMA, for COVID-19 relief reimbursements for fire and police department expenses, as well as for personal protective equipment, PPE, pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15.
Thank you.
Paul, you going to take this one?
Yeah, I'm going to take this one, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much. As many of you know, that March of 2020, we kind of got hit with a pandemic. And
Really?
there was several pots of money that was given to the town of Merrimack to help with COVID and COVID-related expenses. At that time, the President of the United States declared an emergency and allowed the town of Merrimack to ask for funding from March of 2020 up to December of 2020 related to expenses of COVID-19 for the town of Merrimack. One of those expenses was overtime, additional overtime that the fire department was working. For the new counselors, we were running basically an 11-man shift. We ran a car out if there was a call and we ran a car out so the person could triage the patient to see if it was COVID or COVID related. If it was COVID related, then they would gear up with the PPE and then transmit the patient to a nearby hospital. If it wasn't COVID related, it was to allow us to try to save on the PPE, because if you all remember at the beginning of the pandemic, the personal protective gear, the gowns, the masks, the face shields weren't readily available. And we were trying to get them which way we could at the beginning of the pandemic. So with that, we were running an 11-man shift for the fire department. Police department had some overtime as well during this. And then as the summer months came on, we started getting inundated with Watson Park, Wasserman Park, Wildcat Falls area. And that money, those overtime dollars, were allowed to get reimbursed because it was due to COVID that we were getting inundated with requests from the police, fire, and DPW to get overtime to help with informing the public of what the situation was at those facilities. In addition, we're able to secure a PPE through a local vendor, and the government came back and said any PPE that you bought, such as gowns, face mask, face shields, anything related to COVID, was reimbursable. We were able to secure about $36,000 of PPE. FEMA came back and said, that's reimbursable. And then all our extra cleaning supplies, our Cloroxes, our wipes, anything we had, they came back and said, that's eligible. So I held off as long as possible with putting in our request, because I didn't want to submit several requests. And luckily for me, FEMA came back and the federal government came back and said, those costs are 100% reimbursable. In years past, FEMA did a 75-25. 75 for them, 25% for the town match. What happened is when they said it was 100%, I already received our 25% match from the state because of other funding. So we were able to shift the deck chair, so to speak. We didn't lose any money from the state because we had more COVID expenses than we got reimbursed for from the state. So I was able to move some personal service dollars that they would allow for first responders and get reimbursed for those instead of getting reimbursed for our 25% match. So when this is all said and done, the town of Merrimack is requesting from the federal government $255,000, $255,347.77. I worked with New Hampshire DES and their representative. They were our liaison. So she filed all the paperwork for me. So all I'm waiting for is the check, basically, from the federal government to come forward. But what I'm asking the council tonight is if you would please authorize the acceptance and expenditure of this money for the town of Merrimack.
Great, thanks. Does any of the council have any comments or questions? So we'll open the public hearing at 7:12. If there's anybody in the public that wants to address the issue of the FEMA matching funds, FEMA funds for COVID-19, please come forward and let us know what you have on your mind. Okay, the clock ticked. So at 7:13, we're going to close the public hearing. Thank you very much. Are there any other final comments from the council? Nancy?
The only comment I want to make is not related to the money, but I do want to reiterate one more time, probably be the last opportunity, is to really highlight the procedure that was established within this town on how to prioritize the calls that they received, whether they were COVID or not. It was a very different kind of procedure, and it was so well done that a lot of the state adopted that procedure based upon, so I want to congratulate our fire department again, because that really was a very model that was adopted, and thank you.
Good job, thank you. So we're looking for a motion to accept and expend of $255,347.77.
So moved.
Second.
Moved by Barbara Healy and seconded by Nancy Harrington. Thank you.
We'll get these
Thought we were
guys
gonna have to
going.
get the pliers out and pull some teeth. If there's no other comments or suggestions, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Thank you.
Thank you.
Legislative updates from state reps. Do we have anybody in the audience today? No. We did get a letter from Maureen Mooney, one of our state reps. She says, "Greetings, town councilors. The following bills passed through the full House and have now received the following Senate committee recommendations. HB 271, an act relative to standards for per and polyfluoroalkyl substances, plus or minus a word there, PFAS, in drinking water and ambient groundwater," and it got a recommendation of ought to pass. House Bill 135, an act requiring parties responsible for pollution of a drinking water supply to be financially responsible for certain consequences of that pollution, was given a rating of referred to committee. I don't know what that means directly, but it's obviously not going to go forward right now.
Right.
Um,
It's on hold?
More work on it, okay. And then House Bill 236, an act creating a statute of limitations on civil actions relative to damage caused by perfluoroalkyl and polyfluoroalkyl substances, was rated as ought to pass with amendment. Now the House has to concur with the amendment before it reaches the governor's desk. As a second item, the House Judiciary Committee did not pass Amendment 2021-1244H to SB 96. This amendment was another attempt this year to eliminate qualified immunity. And she says, "Thank you for all you do. Respectfully submitted, Representative Maureen Moody, Republican from Merrimack." Representative from Merrimack, whatever. We know she's representative. Anyhow, so that's from Maureen. If there's not anything else, we'll move on to Town Manager's report.
Thank you again, Mr. Chair. The wastewater Phase 3 update. The contract has been executed for Phase 3 upgrade and was signed on May 19, 2021 by the Town of Merrimack and the contractor Methuen Construction. The construction project is expected to begin in the summer of 2021, July timeframe. The project is expected to take 2 years to complete. Street sweeping program is progressing very well, with crews are currently in Zone 2. We anticipate that Zone 1 work will begin on June 1st, finishing the annual street sweeping program. Zones 3 through 6 and the municipalities, parking lots, and school lots are already been completed. So we have we're finishing up a zone and we have one more zone left. With the completion of the street sweeping program, the town-wide pavement line striping program will begin. This contracted service program refreshes about 600,000 linear feet, or around 110 miles, of white, yellow lines on the town roads each year. Public Works pavement marking team has been busy repainting stop bars and crosswalks throughout the town. The annual program maintains about 394 stop bars, 43 crosswalks, and parking lot lines in all municipal parking lots. And finally, work on the roundabout at the intersection of Turkey Hill Road and Babuzik Lake is set to begin next week. Updates on the work will be provided on the website at merrimacknh.gov/roadwork and on DPW's Facebook page at facebook.com/merrimackdpw. The work involves constructing a single-lane roundabout to replace the existing intersection. The first stage of work will be to clear the trees to the west of the intersection and begin installation of new drainage system. Concurrently, utility poles and wires will be relocated by various utility owners to accommodate the new intersection. Work is expected to be substantially complete by October 1st, with full completion November 1st. We're trying to get most of the work done once the school is out, so that less impact on the school buses going back and forth on Babuzik Lake Road. That is all I have for you tonight. Thank you.
Okay. Any questions for the town manager? You're getting off easy. Okay. We don't have a consent agenda for tonight, so under old business, the first item is the Technology Committee charge revisions submitted by Town Council Chair Tom Koenig and Vice Chair Finley Rothaus. The Town Council to review and consider revising the Technology Committee's current charge. And in your packets was information about what the charge is. If you recall, about a month and a half ago now, the Technology Committee came forward and pointed out that they've only had 2 members that have been able to make it to their meetings. And there was some concern about whether they had a quorum and could hold an official meeting or not. We talked about a couple of different things, and so we're trying to figure out tonight what would be the best thing to do, whether we add the technology coordinator, IT coordinator as a member, or whether we reduce the number of members, or whether we realize that it's an advisory committee and it doesn't necessarily need a quorum. They're not voting on any financial things. We just want to try and clarify that so that they can meet. Paul, did you want to?
Yes, Mr. Chair. In looking into this, we found out that the council representative is actually a voting member of this committee, and as such, they can, if they're present at the meetings with the 2 current members, the committee's made up of 5 people, 4 from the public and 1 council representative. So with the 2 that we currently have, plus the council representative, they have a quorum if all 3 of them are there. In addition, I'd like to point out that Jonathan Diaz, please stand for me. Jonathan Diaz is the new IT coordinator, and I have him here tonight as well if the council has any questions about this. I ran this policy by him. That's in your packet as well.
Perfect.
And he's in agreement with it. I'm sorry, John, I didn't run it by you, but John, the chairman of the IT committee, is here as well for the council if they have any
By
questions.
default, I think, but yeah.
So,
So what are we recommending? Just leave things the way they are, or?
basically, we left things the way they are. The committee, the charge that we had in our file was put together by the council at first, and then the committee met and they changed the charge. So it was very confusing to say how many members they had, how many members is a quorum. We simplified the charge and went back to the way it used to be with 5 members, 4 from the public, 1 representative. Jonathan, the IT coordinator, is a non-voting member that will be there to help discussions and be the staff liaison for the meeting. In addition, we shrunk the charge down because there was a bunch of stuff to what is really going on in the world today with website utilization, hardware compatibility, anti-ransomware and security, and ensuring compliance to protect the town's information. Those last couple of things, the anti-ransomware, the security, and ensuring compliance to protect the data, is really what you've been hearing in the news. The pipeline, for instance, didn't do anti-ransomware too well. They didn't have anti-ransomware, and they really didn't comply with the protecting of their data because they got hacked, and it shut down the pipeline all the way up and down the East Coast. Town of Merrimack does have anti-ransomware. I will say that out loud. And we are trying to ensure protecting the town files through passwords and things of that sort. So we have changed the charge a little bit with adding the new hot ticket items that are out there. Basically, the charge has been, and we simplified the charge because, like I said, when it was first established, there was a quick charge that basically said, anything related to IT will go through this committee. Now we're saying specific things will work with this committee. And I'm sure the other thing that I said is meetings will be at least quarterly called by the committee chair. Before it was at the whim of, do we have something? Now that we'll have a fixed schedule, I think it will be better for the membership to actually put in their calendar, we're meeting on this day, and we're going to discuss one of these topics.
So this first page in our packet is what you're proposing?
This is
for
what we're proposing,
for the-
yes,
For the committee charge.
for the committee charge and the makeup.
So
Nancy?
we would have to have a motion and vote on the revised committee charge. Is that accurate?
I think that's accurate, yes.
Yes.
Lon?
Yeah, and this in no way reflects any negativity. but reading this and reading the history and having been aware somewhat, after 11 years of progress in the IT field, which you've alluded to, it occurs to me that when this committee was first formed, the necessity may have been greater than it is now. This one counselor's opinion. And my real question is, does the town still need a technology committee? I mean, so if there is any further deliberation, at least Woods would be saying, the coordinator probably knows more about this stuff than the combined committee that was put together 11 years ago would have even dreamed it would exist.
Yes, I would agree with that statement.
I believe the education, I believe the immersion into IT and the immersion into digital and stuff may have, at least in my thoughts, have outweighed the necessity for a committee. And again, no,
No offense.
don't read anything into that other than me thinking that. Thank you.
Okay, Nancy?
To address that, and I think it's a valid question, could we ask the coordinator his opinion, since
certainly
he's
can.
here,
Yes?
regarding his opinion for the need for this, or the usefulness of it? May we ask you
To join us?
I guess this mic's closer, so we're, can everybody hear
Jonathan.
okay?
Yep.
Yeah,
Take off your,
fine. That's
there you
okay.
go, so they can hear you.
So
Hi,
in
nice to
reviewing
meet you.
this with Paul, and the idea is that the committee is possibly a good idea to get some outside opinion. It's never, good to be in a box. Sometimes people have different experience levels, and they can add a different idea or a different way of thinking, and that sometimes is helpful. I mean, I obviously have a diverse skill set to offer here, so in necessity, I probably don't need the help, but sometimes a topic might come up, so it might be good to have a structure. That's my kind of open-ended idea on it. Does anybody have any questions?
So it kind of sounds like if there's no pain involved, might as well keep it and have it available if something should come up.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes it's a big project, and you can review that plan. That could be something that can come up.
Uh-huh.
Or maybe there's a specific software package that, we look into and we think it's a good choice. Others could review that and give a comment on it and make sure we're, going in the right direction. Or maybe somebody's seen something else out there that we could look at. Sometimes it's good to have just a few outside opinions before you, go down a road.
Okay,
So I'm okay to keep it. I mean,
yep.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thanks. John Souter, did you want to add anything to that? Since you're here and you're
You're not gonna be lonely
representing the committee
anymore.
at this point?
I was part of the committee when it was originally formed, and so I take your point, Alon, that things have changed quite a bit since then. The most important thing that has changed is the makeup of the town. The town now has someone who is much better at doing IT than we had when we started the IT committee. And so I would go along with the idea that perhaps the committee is no longer needed as a committee, but I still think there is some possibility, though, to contribute, that is, for the people of the town who have IT skills to contribute to the town's IT, but perhaps only at the request of the IT director.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have any thoughts they want to share? Nancy?
I'm gonna- I understand your point of view, but if there comes a time that he really just wants to have different opinions, am I missing anything? Would someone look through a proposal, for example, and just be able to make sure I'm understanding, I'm not missing anything? It would take him time to be able to pull people together, and he'd probably have to have a list of available people. Where if there's a committee that maybe meets on an as-needed basis, maybe that's what it could be changed to. Not every quarter, but as needed, keep it intact, and that would be the resource that would be available if he needed. Does that sound like a reasonable Because you are experts from the community.
There certainly are people in the community who have, considering all of them together, a vast range of experience in the IT field. And we could be of value, but a committee that meets once a quarter isn't very useful because you generally have to make decisions a lot quicker than that. And that's why I think being on call might be
As
better.
needed. So the frequency would be that changes. The charge could be the same, but
Well, it only says to meet at least quarterly. If they had a reason to meet more frequently than that, they certainly are welcome to do that. The question I think that I'm hearing is that if they really don't have a strong need and they might rather be on-call available to consult. And, Andy?
So then are we talking about changing it to just an advisory committee then, instead of?
Well, it is an advisory committee. It sounds like we're saying maybe we disband the committee.
Just-
and
Well,
just make it.
I'm saying as far as a quorum goes, because if they're on call and only gonna be called as needed, do we need to change the rules so there's no quorum required?
I'm not even sure there's a
Because they're not
quorum
gonna make
required.
Because
Right.
you're only
But-
talking 3 people. If one person's out and there is a on-call and they need them, then you're not gonna have a quorum anyways.
Any thoughts, Paul?
Those are great questions. Honestly, I think if you're gonna do an on-call you don't need a committee. Because what he's looking for if he calls something on an on-call basis, he's not looking for a decision, but he's looking for
Consulting.
a consulting / opinion. I think Jonathan's being real modest. Honestly, I'm gonna take a couple of seconds and just bear with me. I've been trying to get Jonathan to work for the town of Merrimack for 3 years now. Jonathan first walked into the town of Merrimack way back when we started with the first phone system upgrade 10, 15 years ago. And at that time, he was walking in, he was doing a bunch of stuff to get these phones up and running and things of that sort. And I said, this guy knows his stuff. I've worked with Jonathan several times over the years on exchange problems that we've had in this town, with problems that other vendors could not fix. And Jonathan was able to come up with the solution and figure out why our exchange server wasn't working, why our phone system server wasn't working. He has a vast knowledge in business. He owned his own business where he worked in a hospital settings. He's worked in grocery settings. He worked in a lot of diversified settings. And like I said, it's been 3 years that I've been trying to get you to work for me? Yeah. So I finally persuaded him to come work for the town of Merrimack. If he's looking he has a lot of contacts out there, but if he's gonna be looking for this on-call thing, it is just to say, hey, what have you heard about ransoms out there right now, to get people's opinions. So he's not really looking for a vote, so to speak, as a quorum. So we'll do whatever the council wants. If you want the committee, we'll continue with the committee. If the committee is disbanded, I'm sure John, who I've called on a couple times to help me interview people, would be more than happy if Jonathan called John to give his opinion on some of this stuff. I'm sure he'd be more than happy to take his phone call as well.
Barbara?
Yeah, I was just thinking, it might be advantageous for Jonathan to at least have one meeting of the committee. If we're going to be on call as advisory, it might be worthwhile for him to meet us and understand what our varied backgrounds are. You know, who are your beta testers? You know, if you need someone to pull cable, who can help you pull cable? You know, if you need production support, who knows production support on various applications. So it might be worthwhile for him to at least, if he's going to rely on or get opinion from different folks in the community, what are their expertise, so he knows he's calling the people he needs for that decision-making.
So where are you suggesting that leaves us? with keeping the committee at least for another year and
Well, I think last year I had recommended that we begin to look at the possibility of disbanding the committee. And now that we do have someone who has various levels of knowledge regarding, desktop support, application firmware, that type of thing, then I think the committee has passé at this point, personally.
Okay. Any other comments?
And you're on the committee.
So do we want to put together a motion to disband the technology committee and have them be available as, and offer those members to be available as support if needed?
I think that's a wonderful motion.
Yeah, so moved.
Moved by Barbara Healy and seconded by Nancy Harrington to disband the technology committee with our great thanks for the
And to
efforts
have-
that they've put
And to have
in.
one more meeting for the purpose of familiarization of the members with the new IT director for future resource.
Okay, so that they should call one meeting within the next
Just one.
Yeah.
month or two and then be disbanded?
Yeah.
Okay. So that motion's been made and seconded. Any more comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. I think we know how we're going to go forward now. Thank you. And thank you, Jonathan, for coming. It's nice to meet you.
And John, thank you for your,
Thank you, John, for
Service.
your support in all these years.
Thank you, John.
Okay, which brings us to Chapter 111, Conservation Areas, Merrimack Town Code Process and Procedure Follow-Up Discussion. Submitted by Merrimack Conservation Committee Commission Member Tim Tenhave, the Town Council to be presented with the Conservation Commission's proposed recommended changes to Chapter 111, Conservation Areas of the Merrimack Town Code. Tim, it's great to see you. Thanks for joining us.
I hear my presentation is on here.
It might be.
All right.
Look at that.
This one you had sent to Becky a while back. I don't know if there were any revisions.
It has not changed.
Alrighty.
Yep.
The rest of the backup, there was some here already.
Now I have that funny mask mark on my face.
I'm
Yeah, good. I'm not vain.
gonna just draw one on my face, and then nobody will know the difference.
What
is it? Oh, it's still blank, I believe.
All right. Well, it's been a while since I've sat in this room, so.
It has been,
Yeah.
you've been missed.
Thank you. All right, so I am Tim Tenhave. I am an alternate member of the Conservation Commission, and in the room is our chair, Steve, behind me, as well as our secretary, is that the right word? Gina in the back as well, so. So what I want to do is quickly just kind of go back through history for a brief moment and then step right into the presentation. So back in 2017, the Conservation Commission was looking to make an update to Chapter 111, and Chapter 111 of our town code is the conservation chapter, covering all our current conservation properties that were put into that chapter. So we start working on a plan as to how to execute that and how we'd go about it. And we came to the town council in March of 2018 with that plan. Very deliberate steps, lots of words, lots of things, just because we wanted to be as transparent as possible and provide opportunity for people to get input, but also to speak to the town council about getting the support that was needed to put the plan into action and actually arrive at an updated chapter. So after we did that, we went to work. We started looking at all the parcels that we should consider. We started looking at the restrictions in the current chapter and some of the restrictions that we considered should be added or changed. due to language in certain deeds and other things that have transpired since 1995 when the chapter was originally written. So with all that homework and all that work we put together and we stepped through our plan, we stepped through phase 1, we got into phase 2 of the plan, and we put together what we are proposing, what you see here tonight. As part of our plan, we took this proposal of language and regulations to town staff. They've provided input. They've provided some comments back. We can review those comments as we get into it, or maybe some of that will come out during our discussion. But I believe what we're presenting to you here now is a consensus, but there are some concerns, and we can talk about them. So what I'm looking for now is, and I'll step to the next spot here, is we're at step 11 in phase 2 of the update. We're really looking to move to the next phase, and the next phase is to take what we have put together and turn it into legal language, something that could be a true chapter and ordinance that could then come back here for phase 4 and follow the normal update of a town ordinance through the normal process that's specified in the town charter, which is the first reading, second reading, and third reading, including the public hearings and all that goes with it. So what I'd like to accomplish tonight is to get your consensus that we're going in the right direction, or get your feedback so we can make adjustments before we actually go to the point of engaging with town council, the other council, and town staff, and getting the right language in place that could then be utilized by our police department if, in fact, we ever need to go to that point. So that's where I'm at. Let's go to the next slide. So let me take a moment and talk about the current chapter. So this was put together in 1995, and it's really changed very little since then. It uncovers 6 parcels. I use the term parcel because we identify our land by parcel and tax ID, and so tax ID and parcel, same thing. So the 6 parcels include Wildcat Falls Conservation Area, what is known as Riverside Park, which is behind Riverside Drive and runs along the Sauhegan River. Then we have 3 parcels, French Court, Hitching Post Lane, and Woodward Road. Those parcels are all pretty close to each other in the northwest part of town, mostly wet in open space. It also includes Mitchell Street, and I think I've left one parcel off in this whole list, and I didn't realize that today when I was reviewing it. It also includes Gilmore Hill Memorial Forest, I believe.
Oh, okay.
Which is down near Green Pond. Yeah, I guess I should double check that. I did include a copy of the chapter with us. So in the current version, all 6 parcels have the same restrictions. And the penalty is a violation in accordance with RSA 39:3 Roman numeral 3, colon 39 Roman numeral 3. And essentially, if you read that language, which has changed a little bit over time, but it follows the normal violation, which could be punishable up to $1,000, depending on the will of the prosecutor and the judge. So, So restrictions include that you cannot remain or stay on the property a half an hour after sunset and until a half an hour before sunrise. So there is hours restrictions that go with it. No fires unless approved by the Conservation Commission and the fire warden. Interestingly, we don't have a fire warden here in town, so that's one open thing. No glass is allowed, no throwing or leaving trash. Essentially, you have to carry out all your trash. No alcohol or unlawful drugs. No parking or driving except in designated areas. No OHRVs as defined by RSA 215-A:1, except for fire, police, ambulance, or emergency needs. No domesticated animals unless on a leash, rein, or in a cage. Haven't seen anyone bring someone in a cage, but I guess that's possible. And no discharge of air-powered, spring-powered gun, any type of bow or firearm, and no defacing of any building equipment, tree, shrub, or flower. So that's the current chapter for those 6 parcels.
Is that summarized, or literally it's just those lines?
It's pretty close to just those lines.
Okay. That was short and sweet then.
Yeah, the current chapter is a page and a quarter.
Oh, okay.
So it's not that big. So what we're looking to do is, instead of having 6 parcels, we're looking to have 62 parcels included in the updated Chapter 111. You might think that's quite a few, but if you think about some of our large areas of land, one of them being Greater Woods that we talk about, it's 800 acres plus or minus. That really is 10 legal parcels put together to form that. So Horse Hill, by the way, is just 1 parcel, so it runs the full gamut. So 62 parcels. These parcels, which ones to be included, were reviewed and approved by town staff, so that we got their input on which parcels to include. They had concerns over some of them, and some of them had future uses that we weren't aware of. Most notably, some of the parcels that are down closer to Babusick Lake that could help support upgraded sewer system at some point or something like that. So what we're also proposing is to have 4 categories of parcels included in here. So therefore, some parcels would have some restrictions and some would have less restrictions or different restrictions. But in general, all the parcels will have the same basic set of restrictions included with them, and then we'll have 3 other parcels, one that has hours restriction. The current chapter has hours restrictions, so we're asking to retain that for a couple of parcels. Some of them that'll be considered completely passive. That means no motorized of any kind. Currently, no OHRVs are allowed per the RSA. We're expanding on that, and we can get into why that's important for those parcels. And then the 4th item is if a property is a well property, and if there's any special things we want to do because of the fact that it's a well or adjacent to a well. But I'll be honest with you, I haven't got that feedback from MVD. I'm sorry, from Merrimack Village District, and honestly, it's not their fault, it's my fault. I lost track of it and didn't reach out, so that's where we're going. Let me take it a little bit further. So looking at restrictions for all parcels, no fires. So we didn't, the previous one said no fires except for permission with the MCC and the fire warden. Well, I don't believe we have a fire warden. The state does.
Well, our fire chief would be our fire warden, but
He's our fire, okay. But the other part of it was to be approved by the Conservation Commission, and we're an advisory board. We have no regulatory, we have no enforcement capability. We meet every couple of times a month or so, and the commission didn't feel that they had the right authority as well as the right processes in order to know whether a fire is appropriate in a particular spot or another, and would rather just say no fires. Because this is a chapter being proposed that the town council oversees, we can make adjustments to that as necessary. So we're also saying no throwing or leaving of trash. It's pretty much the same thing as before. We're not specifying no glass. Glass, though, if it's left behind, would be considered trash. So we think it's covered by that. Back in '95, there were a lot more Coke bottles and other things that were glass, and people used glass a lot more than they do now. We don't see issues with glass on our conservation properties anymore. The only glass that we might encounter is glass that originally contained alcoholic beverage, but alcohol's not allowed, so it's covered that way as well. So we decided just to take the language out because someone might have a glass bottle, something that they want to use to feed their young child or something else, and we felt that it was, because we're not seeing a problem, why add language anyways? So we continue the no alcohol or unlawful drugs. The question is do you really need to say unlawful drugs because they're unlawful to begin with?
well, not all drugs are unlawful. I mean, obviously,
Yes.
Advil is not an unlawful
Right.
drug, but
So no parking except in designated areas like we. Yeah.
there's that too.
Yeah. So, we would like to continue no OHRVs, but like to expand that to be no e-bikes as well at this time. And this is now going to, go over all 62 parcels. So I'll, be very straightforward with all of you. We should discuss it. We do allow OHRVs on some of our parcels, and we don't allow them on others. So in some parcels by deed, we don't allow them because the deed is very specific, and that's the way we accepted the property, and we need to continue to do that. But some parcels like Horse Hill, we don't allow OHRVs, and what we have is a clause in the master plan that says if a group got together that would help support that use, then we could open it up. In fact, we suggest some areas where OHRVs, could be appropriate on Horse Hill. But to this date, since we put that plan together in 2003, 2004, no group has come forward to take responsibility for that use on Horse Hill, and we don't have that use happening now on Horse Hill because of that.
So the right writers never came forward?
Not for Horse Hill.
Okay.
So for
Okay,
Right.
that was a different place.
Right, yeah,
Okay.
so on Greater Woods, the
Okay.
right riders participated in our stewardship plan for that property, and we did designate some trails for that use. They also, one of their members became a member of the Conservation Commission for a while, and he also was a member of the subcommittee that we formed for managing Greater Woods. They also provided another member of their group who was part of the subcommittee, so there were two members there. And for a while, they were active participants. But they haven't participated now in the Greater Woods subcommittee for at least 4, maybe 5 years. I believe they still handle that spot off of West Road, I believe it is, near the transfer station, but there hasn't been any desire to rejoin and participate with Greater Woods. And quite honestly, the trails are maintained by volunteers, and the volunteers are the users of the property. And we feel that if folks want to do OHRV activities on the property, they should become volunteers and participate in the maintenance for that use. If they're not going to participate for the maintenance, we shouldn't allow the use. That's really the thought from the Conservation Commission.
Finley?
Should I wait till the end of the presentation, or are we gonna, as we go along?
It's
You're okay
totally
with
up to you. We can handle them as we come if you'd like.
Yeah, let's not wait.
All right, so I just want to understand what you had said about Horse Hill.
Yeah.
There's verbiage in the article, in the ordinance, if you will, that says that it is available for use if there's a participating club or an organization that is there to help out.
Yeah,
So you want to eliminate that completely?
correct.
Okay, would it be better to leave the wording there, and if the club does come forward, we don't have to go through the process of opening it back up again, sitting up here and going through the public hearings and so on?
Yeah, that's absolutely a route we could take, but you'd want to then extend that to all the properties?
Well, the ones where it might be. I didn't
Yeah.
remember that for Horse Hill. I knew of it for
Yeah.
Greater Woods. I didn't
Yeah.
realize it was there as well. Now, as far as Greater Woods, they haven't participated for a while. Have people been using it for OHRVs and motorcycles and so on, dirt bikes and whatnot?
There has been some use. Most of the use has been on trails that don't currently allow it, even if they're not designated for that use. We're seeing entrance into the property from the town of Amherst, coming through trails from the town of Amherst, which the town of Amherst doesn't allow OHRV use on their trails. So that's kind of where it is. We're also seeing some use along the power lines, but those power lines, part of those properties are now owned by us.
Because I don't need it for tonight, Tim, but I would like to know the areas where the maintenance is higher, because I'd like to look at it.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a visual guy, as I always say.
So the use is very little at this point in general, for when it comes to OHRV on Greater Woods. Not unless Steve or Gina behind me have a different thought, but honestly, I've not heard of intrusion on that property in quite a while, so.
For Greater?
For Greater Woods, yeah.
Greater.
So,
Yeah, 'cause
but also the subcommittee hasn't really been meeting, so we haven't been getting their feedback, because they weren't allowed to meet during COVID. So,
No, I understand that.
yeah.
All right, all right, no, that's good.
Yeah.
I can talk a little bit more later about it. I
Yeah.
appreciate
agree
it.
with you.
Yeah,
Yeah.
so I, just so you understand, I
One more
thought,
real quick.
Yeah.
Andy, Did you have something you wanted to say, or are you trying?
Well,
to
if we're not gonna wait till the end to ask a question, I do wanna ask a question. I haven't been here for the history of this. I did read the history in the packet, but, you know, we started off the presentation by saying in 2007, we wanted to update chapter 111. And I guess my question is why? What problem are we fixing?
Sure, great question. So, what we're doing is we're expanding some of the restrictions. We've had some issues with trash here and there on different properties, but not all the properties have that trash restriction, most notably in Horse Hill in Greater Woods. So we're looking to fix that. We're looking to fix or eliminate the commission from being part of the approvals of fire. We're also looking to eliminate the concept of camping, because we don't know how to regulate camping. We don't know how to regulate human waste that might come from that activity and all of that. So we're looking to restrict that as well. Most of the issues have been around trash. Now, we do occasionally have pop-up issues of ATVs and those kinds of vehicles going on some of our properties. And when we've raised that, our police department has said, well, we don't have that tool that we can use to discourage that use. Right now, they can warn someone and say that, you know, the rules of the property, which is not enforceable, it's not a code, say you can't do that activity here or potentially on this trail. And if the people come back, our department and our chief can certainly speak to it and maybe correct and update me, but we can, you know, go after them for trespass after they've been warned. But right now, we want to make it really clear that that's just not an allowed activity, so.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Well, and one of your further expansions is the initial one talked about 6 parcels, and now you're trying to include all of the
Yeah,
expanded
right.
Conservation Commission parcels to have some legal authority over them.
Correct.
Other than just the town council assigning you guys to take care of them.
Yeah.
So there are definitely values. Barbara?
I guess I'm looking for the operational aspect of this. So you're going from 6 to 62 properties. We really haven't been able to control the 6 very well as far as garbage and trash and other, because I know that because I've gone out and picked up some of that
Right.
stuff.
Right.
So what is the plan for, you know, being able to patrol, or even, are we relying on the police department? Because they can't be on the trails all the time either. So I'm just wondering what the thought process is to be able to enforce it.
So you hit the nail on the head. The police department doesn't have the staff, and probably not the priority for the police department to be out there traversing our trails all the time. But every now and then you do get a problem person or a problem group that comes along that will repeatedly do a particular activity that we're trying to prevent. Those people will get seen, their pictures will be taken, or they'll be reported to the police department with a license plate number or a registration number on a vehicle or something like that. Then the police department can take action and do something about it. So we're not looking to create super enforcement and take officers off their patrols and patrol our property. But we're really just trying to provide that extra tool that they have in their tool belt in order to take care of the bad eggs, right? So, we had heard concerns prior to doing this update that they didn't have those tools. So this is one way to fix that, we believe. So, but just to take your question just one step further, you know, we may at some point want to consider a conservation officer, someone who, on a part-time basis or whatever, because we're talking about quite a few couple thousand acres here, right, when you put it all together. So there's a lot of property, it gets a lot of use, a lot of great use, people really enjoy the properties, but right now it's kind of the Wild West. It could be, but most people are very good and people are respectful, and we don't have an issue with 99% of the people, so.
Paul?
Tim, can you explain the no e-bikes? What was the thinking of the
So-
Conservation Commission at that? Because,
Right.
you know, some people with disabilities have the e-bike, and we're allowing biking and mountain biking on these, but we're not gonna allow the e-bike, so if you can just explain that a little bit.
So when we started the process, e-bikes weren't nearly as well classified and understood as they are today. Right now, I believe at the state level and the federal government level, they're looking at 3 classes of e-bikes. Before, e-bikes could be someone in their home garage strapping a motor and a battery to a bike and go out there. And what was happening beforehand is that some e-bikes were close to as powerful as a moped or even a dirt bike. And you could essentially be coming down off a hill. I mean, you can do that on a bicycle or mountain bike right now, at 17, 18, 20 miles an hour. You could on an e-bike with some of these at 22, 25, 26 miles an hour. At that speed, it's hard to potentially react to someone else who could be on the trail, such as a horse or a couple with their young children and stuff like that. So when we were putting this together, because it wasn't a well-regulated industry and a well-understood industry, we decided that just no e-bikes. A lot of other processes have done that. Since that point, since last year, they've now come up with the different classes of e-bikes. Class 1 meaning that you don't get electric power unless you're pedaling. And they have a limited speed as to what they can get to. That might be something we'd like to consider. Class 2, I believe, doesn't require you to pedal, and then Class 3 is getting closer to a motorbike. So yes, we could consider making adjustments. When we take this to our legal counsel, we might want to ask them to look at that language and get that feedback and see if there is a way for us to allow the use. But the other concern with e-bikes is there are certain trails where you don't want motorized use. So we would have to be careful as to where we allow them, simply because of the fragility of the nature of the area of nature. Maybe it's a traditionally very wet area or something like that. So. But yeah, in the beginning, when we started doing this, the e-bikes weren't nearly as well understood as they are today, and probably continuing to evolve. So.
Yeah, it does sound like if they all fall into that one category of e-bikes, that there's a major concern, but I would think Class 1 probably could be acceptable.
Yeah, I'm not sure my full commission agrees with that logic, but yes, I think we should be open to that, just as we're open to most every other use. Right?
Right.
So.
Thanks for the interruption. Appreciate it.
All right. So the next one is an area where we should take a few moments and discuss. So the next point is the no discharge of air-powered, spring-powered, or any type of bow or firearm for the purpose of target shooting, without authorization of the town council or designated agents. Again, let me just touch on the last phrase. We're trying to get away from the Conservation Commission being the approvers because, we don't have the ability to know that particular spot is the right spot to do that. That's something you'd want to have. You'd want to have professionals weigh in on. Can we keep the area clear? Can we ensure there's no one behind the backstops? Is there a backstop? And a lot of other things if you wanted to have that. So, but the first language, the air-powered, spring-powered gun or bow of any type of firearm, is in our current chapter. We're currently doing that. What we're trying to do, though, is to reduce that scope down, because right now with the current 6 parcels, when you have that language and it stops after firearm, that means you can't hunt as well. And we're not trying to stop hunting. Hunting is allowed on most of the properties, except for some where it's not deeded, and we can talk about that. We will talk about that in a moment. So really what we're trying to do is discourage people going out and putting a can on a rock and popping a few shots at it. So
it's target
with
shooting.
no concern about a backstop or anything. Yeah.
right, yeah, right. So
Can you tell me what a spring-powered gun is referring to?
so I can talk about one that's a kid's gun. We used to put a little arrow in a gun and go boom.
Yeah.
Right.
Is that what you mean, a Nerf gun?
Well, that's the language that's in the original one. Something could be a lot stronger than that too, right? So,
Presumably.
Christmas story.
right.
Like e-bikes, there's got to be a lot of class differences there.
Yeah.
But
Mr. Chair, I think we have 2 gentlemen that can explain what a spring-powered gun is.
I'll defer to the deputy chief.
That was fast.
I'm on fire.
So I think what it's referring to is a high-power air rifle. They run on a pneumatic spring power. So as opposed to a CO2 cartridge, it runs on a pneumatic spring. That's where it generates its force and velocity to shoot a pellet or a BB. So I think that's what that means.
But spring powered as opposed to CO2 powered.
Correct.
Interesting.
A lot of
Okay.
the high-power air rifles are spring power, so.
Okay. Yeah, well, I understand, but you have to cock a Nerf gun, and I know that's an extreme, but you always get into trouble when you start trying to specialize these things, you know. I mean,
So-
We're talking about parsing?
yeah, exactly. Sorry. Go ahead.
Okay, so then, we're basically expanding the no defacing in order to add, flora and fauna and wildlife to it. Besides that, it's the same language that we had before. We're also specifically putting out gates and barricades because we utilize gates and barricades to keep people out of certain areas, and that I don't believe was, in the current language, so we're trying to be a little bit more clear. And then the last item, like I mentioned a moment ago, is no sleeping or camping overnight without authorization of the town council or designated agents. So that language or designated agents is your out to say, hey, Paul, you deal with it, right?
Yeah, I appreciate that.
Just like a chief.
Yeah.
Or chief, you deal with it, yeah.
Right, or whatever, right? Or we could designate someone here and take you out of the picture altogether, but.
No, I think that's the way it ought to be
Yeah.
there. I guess I almost think any of these restrictions could be overridden by approval of the town council or
Yeah,
designated
absolutely.
agent, as far as fires and stuff is concerned. I
Yeah.
know you don't want random fires anywhere on the place, but if somebody is gonna be allowed to camp, it may very well be that they'll want a fire to
Right.
do something and cook a
Yeah.
s'more or something.
Yeah, and our hope is that it would be understood where they could do that, where it was considered safe, maybe the fire chief or the warden steps out and takes a look and says, yeah, that's an appropriate location, there's no trees overhead, all that kind of stuff, so.
Which begs the question that no fires should be altered to be able to say, with the approval of the fire chief. Let's just say the fire chief instead of a warden, because that's who it is. And there would be a determination. I mean, I could see the Boy Scouts wanting to get together for an event. So are you just gonna give it willy-nilly for nothing? No. But there are specifically some really legitimate reasons. So I would prefer not to leave no fires, but with the approval of the fire chief.
Yeah,
And he or she can make that determination.
okay.
That's my opinion, but.
So do you want to put that specifically on each of these items, or do you want to put a overarching
Just an
statement that says
overarching.
that these rules can be modified by the town council or something
Can be
on an
relaxed,
individual basis,
Right, yeah, whatever, yeah.
Oh, okay.
or their designated agent? But
Because the chief, he could be the designated agent, correct,
Yeah,
for fires.
yeah,
yes,
that's a good point.
Nancy Murphy.
Yeah, just, I would think though, with the exception of alcohol and unlawful drugs, I can't imagine our town manager overriding a permission to bring in unlawful drugs. So if
Not to
there's,
keep his job for long, is that what you mean?
so there might have to be some exclusions on the.
Well, in any case, they'd have to come and ask, and then they'd have to make an extremely good case as to why they would
Leave it alone.
get away with doing that. And we have allowed people to have parties at Wasserman Park.
That's right.
Where they would add alcohol for a graduation or bar mitzvah or something like that. But only after they've come to the council and explained what they were doing, why they're doing it, how they're doing it, and things like that. And it's not an open invitation to go out and party by the lake.
I was gonna say, we had a situation at Horse Hill where a couple had their wedding out there. They met out there and they wanna have their wedding out there and they had their reception out there. So in that case, they would ask to have alcohol at the reception. So, the drugs, no, the alcohol, I can see.
Only if we don't let the police know. Oh, sorry. I hope not.
All right. So the last item is to note is that we didn't have language when it comes to dogs, which is in the current one, which, specified a leash or a cage. We feel that chapter 119, the dog chapter, covers the properties. But you should note, and something raised by our Parks and Rec director is that Chapter 119 says that your dog must be under control, and it also states that you need to clean up after your animal. If we have that, like say at Wasserman Conservation Area, and then you step 2 feet over the line, and now you're in Wasserman Park, where leashes are required, our director here, Matt, had requested that we put up signage to indicate to people that they're moving from one property restriction to a different property
It's hard.
restriction, which we could easily do, and I think that border is the only one that we border a town property that has a different one, which is covered in chapter 142, if you want to look it up, so.
Okay,
So, I think we can accommodate that.
that sounds
So,
good to me.
Yeah. Okay, certainly an eye chart, but
I was
those are
gonna
all,
say.
those are all the parcels.
So the interesting thing about these parcels, you're listing them all by street and number, and nobody knows, that I know, knows those parcels by that designation.
Yeah,
You did include a map in our packet that showed a lot of blue circles and squares and
right,
trapezoids and things like that, and I'm presuming those are all the different parcels
they are.
that you're
yeah,
referring to.
Yeah.
Is that sufficient, do you think, to have it just listed that way, as Riverside Drive and,
Well, so the parcel ID is in that first column, in that orange column.
well, I can't read that at all.
Yeah, I know. I understand, but when it comes to the ordinance, the current ordinance lists by parcel ID as well as address. We would have to do
And
something
we can look it up
similar.
on the tax map.
Right, yep,
Yeah.
so,
Okay,
all right. So instead of 6 parcels with hours restriction, we're looking to take it down to 2 of the current parcels and the other parcels not having that restriction.
so a 24-hour
No,
access,
so-
or?
Yes, so all the other parcels would be 24-hour access, which we allow on Horse Hill, we allow on Greater Woods, we allow that on Wasserman Conservation property. Not
do we?
Not Wasserman Park, but Wasserman Conservation property.
Okay,
So,
but they can't camp there and they can't sleep there.
correct.
But they could be there at 2 in the
Yeah.
morning.
They can, yeah. So if you want to do a midnight snowshoe walk. and
You don't
see-
have to get special permission to be
Right,
out on
exactly.
conservation land.
You can just go,
That's
right? You know, you.
Why? Not me,
you-
but.
You'd be surprised how many people hike at night and enjoy that opportunity.
Along with
you
the
know.
bears?
Yeah, exactly. Stargazers are great for it. They'll get out under the power lines where it opens up, and they'll do that. Mountain bikers will do it. It's a different challenge at night, right? So.
I'm sure it is.
It is. So.
Okay.
And it happens quite frequently. I live near Horse Hill, and I see the cars out there, coming home at 11 o'clock at night. There'll be 5 or 6 cars in the parking lot. You look in the back, and they'll have the bike racks on them, so it's a bunch of bikers out having a good time. So.
Okay.
So the properties that we'd like to retain the hours restriction is Wildcat Falls Conservation Area. I think most of you are familiar with that property and some of the issues we've had with that. I would propose that we don't disrupt the neighborhood by opening it up to night use and having people in that parking lot at night shining their headlights into the backyards of neighbors and stuff like that. And then the other parcel is the Riverside Drive parcel, which is behind a number of homes along the Sauhegan River. It's always been like that there. I don't think we get a lot of traffic there. I think it's mostly used by the neighbors. So I don't think there'd be a lot of heartburn if we were to remove it, but there may be some neighbors who would like to know that there's not someone in their backyard, so.
And are those neighbors using it at night and now they won't be able to? or-
Honestly, I don't know. Well, technically, they're not able to do it now, so.
Oh, because it's already
It's already
restricted.
restricted, right. So, we don't have any issues out there. I'm not aware of any sort of police calls or issues out there. If you go out there, you might find a few party spots but they may have existed for 20 years and just never been cleaned up, so.
Since you were a teenager, you mean?
Well, yeah, I don't want to talk about that, so.
So, this concept
Wildcat
of
Falls was
removing
my
these,
place, by the way, when I was a teenager, so.
this concept of removing the restrictions has been vetted through town hall and department heads and stuff
Yeah.
like that, and nobody's
Correct.
expressed concern or whatever.
I don't believe anyone expressed concerns about the, removing the hours restrictions on the
hours
other
restrictions,
parcels.
okay.
So now we get to completely passive, all right? So what changes with completely passive is they still have all the restrictions that we spoke about before, but it adds no snowmobiles as defined by RSA 215-C. Snowmobiles are handled separately in the state RSAs. And it prohibits the discharge of a bow, firearm, for any reason at all. So essentially it restricts and doesn't allow hunting. So you'll
And
note the
That's by
language.
deed or something that,
Well, so, yeah, so there's
For
13
most of them.
parcels proposed. I know I provided a summary after former Councilor Albert asked to understand why the 13 parcels. Most of them have a deed restriction. There are a few that don't. One of the completely passive ones is Wildcat Falls. That's the Hemlock Street, parcel 5C-658. Right now, we don't, that restriction is there. We chose to leave it there because of the nature of the parcel. So, but there is nothing in the deed that would restrict that, so. But since it's always been that way, we propose to keep it that way. Riverside Drive is another one. But, going from the bottom up, Karen Street, which is the new Sklar property, I believe, that's in the deed. So, the 2 Doll Road parcels, they're very, very thin, not very wide, but very long, and they're basically backlots along a neighborhood with homes on all sides of it. I'm not even sure you could legally hunt there, because I'm not sure you can meet.
can't
the
get far
300
enough away,
I don't know if
yeah.
you can meet the 300-foot restriction on all of them, but we felt that was appropriate. Going further up, Hemlock was Wildcat Falls. Madeline Bennett Drive is the conservation property behind the middle school. That has restricted uses. Its restricted use, though, is to OHRVs or anything motorized. There is no restriction to hunting on that, but it's 28 acres of an 800-acre conservation area right behind a middle school. Kind of makes sense not to have firearms being discharged back there. So when there's plenty of other places to do it just 100 feet further back, right? So the Greens Pond Road ones include Gilmore Hill Memorial Forest, which has a restriction, I believe, on it. Actually, I should double check my notes. I know it has the motorized one, but it's part of the current parcel and has that restriction anyways. The other ones are along parcels that abut Wasserman Conservation Area. So most of us are very familiar with Wasserman Park. We've got the parking lots, we've got the tennis courts, the beach and all that stuff. But to the east of that is a conservation area with lots of trails on it, which by deed does not allow hunting of any kind, as well as any motorized use, including snowmobiles. So we, further east of that, before you get to Greens Pond Road, the Conservation Commission a few years ago purchased some parcels from there, and basically we call it the Wasserman Extension. And since Wasserman Conservation Area has those restrictions, it's hard to know that you've actually gone a few feet further and now you're on a parcel that allows it. It's all conservation property. We felt that it was appropriate just to consider that whole block the same way, as opposed to making the rules different and then making it harder for enforcement, right? Someone can be on the line, oh, this foot's good, that foot's not good. So, then Natticook Road, one of them is Wasserman Conservation Area. The other one is Blueberry Island. Does anyone know what Blueberry Island is?
that'd be in the middle of the water somewhere.
Exactly. Right in the middle of Natticook Lake is Blueberry Island, and by deed, it restricts both hunting and motorized use on it, so we included that, so. And it is appropriately named. If you ever wanted to go out there and push your way through the bushes, what you're pushing your way through are blueberry bushes. They're tall bush blueberries, and if you can beat the birds, you can really get some nice.
Some nice berries.
Get a nice snack out of that, so.
But you gotta get out there first, so.
You do, absolutely. So that's the 13 parcels, and we tried to keep it to the minimum. And when you look at the total acreage, you know, by deed, we can't avoid it, and the other ones are just a few parcels out of the many hundreds of acres that we don't restrict hunting on. And if you'll notice, the language is such that it doesn't restrict the carry of a firearm, okay? So people who feel that they need to have that for their own personal protection or exercising their rights, they're able to do that. It doesn't stop them from doing that, doesn't prevent them from doing it. It just tells them they can't fire it on the property, okay? Now, you would say that if they had a need for their personal protection to do that, I would think that would trump this. And this is, you know, that concern, if done in an
Well,
appropriate manner.
They can
So-
deal with the courts in that case.
Yeah, right, yeah, so, and I'm not sure our prosecutor would prosecute them
I
based.
don't think so either, if there
so-
was a strict need to
Exactly,
discharge their gun.
right, so.
Do you, if you don't know, I can get it later. Do you, the parcels at Wasserman Park, the conservation parcels that include the two that you had mentioned on Greens Pond, what's the total acreage of that? And if you don't have it, I can get it later.
I don't have it offhand. I would guess it's somewhere between 100 and 140 acres,
Okay,
okay?
thanks, Tim.
Yeah,
Okay,
yeah. And the last is wells, and honestly, I didn't reach out to MVD. I let that ball drop. You know, I've had 3 years to do it. But
I'm sure you've been sitting around twiddling your thumbs this
Yeah.
whole
You
time
can't
too.
count
you
the
know.
last year, it's lost to
It
everything.
is lost everything, except for right here. It's all right here.
Yeah.
So that's in a nutshell. I kind of figured the OHRV activity would stir some conversation, and happy to have it in, as well as the words around hunting and stuff like that. But I think you'll find that we can be successful if someone is hunting where we say not to. But that's an opinion you'd want to get from your town council. I know our town council has expressed that before. The RSAs are interesting in that area. As a property owner, you can set your own rules. As a town, there's certain rules you can't set, but my understanding is that it's never been challenged in a court of law. No one's actually gone to it to go back and forth as to whether or not you can restrict hunting on a town property, so.
Those are my only thoughts with the whole proposal and your suggestions, which I like, and I appreciate all the effort that's gone into it, because you've always done amazing stuff with these things. But from a hunting aspect, the reason I was curious of the acreage is because I think hunting is starting to dwindle down. We see bears regularly now. I saw a couple, now with my grandkids, they told me it was epic, my little 5-year-old. So so, restricting hunting, which it already is currently, you had said, at Wasserman Park, with whatever the acreage, if it is 100, 140, is a relatively large cumulative parcel. And so I just, thinking out loud that I don't know, I'm not a hunter, so it has no impact on my life at all. But because of the lessening of that, the wildlife management tools, it's one of them that they use, I didn't know if it's something that we would contemplate opening as opposed to closing completely.
Well, the only part that we could open because of the deed restriction would be that 30 acres
Okay,
of the
the
3
other
parcels.
parcels on Queens
The
Park.
rest of it is by deed.
It's already by deed. Yep, very
Yeah,
good.
So can't change
Took care of
that.
that real fast.
Yeah.
Thanks, Tim.
So,
Very good. Are there any other questions or comments from the council? Nancy?
The only, aside from the fire issue, which again might be covered by that statement, the overall statement, Tom, that you'd suggested, aside from that, because I'd feel comfortable that that would cover it, is the OHRV issue. And you're right, that's sort of been a discussion and a debate for a lot of times.
Right.
I like the idea that what you said, Finley, about utilizing language that I just don't know if it's doable. That would restrict it, would be allowed if there were a organization that would be committed to the maintaining of it, you know? Because there is language in that, right?
Yeah.
But it's the enforcement, yeah,
There is for Horse Hill. There's language in the master plan,
okay.
okay, for that.
And whether we should use that for Greater Woods as well, is my point.
Yeah, because it seems like because of the, your comments about the maintenance, which it's an extra effort for a volunteer group when they don't use it for those purposes, so that wouldn't be fair. But if the use is minimal and and the damage minimal. Because I know if it's aggressively used, I was out there before the town owned that property on a four-wheeler and saw the damage that was caused. It's
Sklar's-
our
look
property,
at
buddy,
Sklar.
Sklar's property destroyed. And so
Right.
I know what can happen, but if it's, for somebody who enjoys a snowmobile in the middle of winter, and just a leisurely ride through the woods, I don't have a problem, but, so I don't know how we go about it either, but I.
And again, like as you intimated, Andy, that, if it's not a problem right now,
Right.
then I think there's enough justification not to change it, or to put that criteria in, repeat it from the Huss Hill, and have it go to Greater Woods.
Yep.
And it goes back to the original argument. When part of because I was here then, most of us were. Not all of us were, but most of us were. Part of the sales pitch for the purchasing of the various properties was, by the way, we're gonna be able to do this and this and this. And so I feel like we're reneging on the sales pitch that we gave them. So I understand the concern, and yeah, Sklar is a perfect example of abuse that was not taken care of. And I guess, is it still a problem, by the way? Do you know? It is, I'm saying. So again, once it's abused, it's hard to stop that abuse. But at the same time, there was a promise to the people who voted it in. And I don't want to negate that, so I would feel comfortable with that kind of language. That's my personal opinion.
Yeah, so what I would suggest then, that it would be a state-approved, because a lot of OHRV clubs are, I know snowmobiles, and maybe the folks in the back of the room can correct me, but, snowmobile clubs exist, and they have a state approval process, which means it's a real group. I would propose that we'd have language that stated that the OHRV group was a real group. If there's
So
a way
there's
to.
legitimacy and all that.
Right.
A
I'd be
registered
okay with
Right,
that.
legitimate group.
Right
yeah.
Riders is considered a real group, and honestly, I don't know the right language because I'm not an OHRV person, so.
Right.
But be aware that snowmobiles and OHRVs are separate in the law, and snowmobiles are only being restricted on the completely passive ones, which
Okay.
some of those parcels have language that excludes them, so we would
Right.
have to continue that to going forward. So that's just the 13 parcels,
I'd feel okay with that criteria being added.
okay? Yeah, we can
Because
find the right language.
It
yeah.
was, I've always thought it was the destruction of the property, the potential destruction is why we prohibited it. I never thought, like your e-bike comment, that you could be doing 25 miles an hour down a hill. I never thought of it from that standpoint. It was always because of the potential damage.
Yeah.
So, but the e-bikes, I echo Paul's things, the ADA component of it, it seems like for
Yeah.
folks with disabilities. I've ridden an e-bike, never heard of them until last year, quite frankly. And it was somebody who was worried that they were gonna be banned from Horse Hill Nature Preserve, so that's why I was contacted about it. And I rode it, you had to pedal for it to work, so I didn't know there were different,
That's a class 1.
Yes.
Different classes, yeah.
Yeah.
So, if you don't have to pedal, then it's not a bike anymore, it's a motorcycle of sorts, I guess, so.
Motorized bike, yeah.
Yeah,
but-
but this one you had to pedal or it wouldn't move.
Right.
But anyhow,
Anybody else have any thoughts? Do you have enough feedback from us at this
So-
point to move forward, or what
Yeah, so
what
my,
would you like us to do?
my goal was to take the feedback to the Conservation Commission and then start with the legalese and start putting the legal language so we can prepare something to come back here and have a formal approval for. So as long as with what we've discussed, you'd all feel confident that we could probably bring this all the way through phase 4 to approval, then I'm good. If you've got reservations that would prevent us from actually getting this approved, we should hear them now, instead of using people's time that would turn around essentially be wasted, right? So, and expense, because our town council does cost money, right? So,
well, I imagine some tweaking when the final package comes here, possibly, maybe not,
Yeah.
but
yeah.
I voiced my thoughts and
Me too.
small concerns, I think, on it, so.
I'm comfortable with what you've given. I just wanted to make sure it was the consensus of the council, because I'd love to address your issues today, if at all possible, or as many of them as possible.
Yeah, I think I've addressed my concerns, but the no fires period, I thought we needed to put in some leeway there.
Yep.
For approvals or whatever. I hadn't originally understood the difference between dirt bikes and and bicycles included as defined in RSA 259-6:6, which you had on your side notes. But I think I'm okay with what you have there. And then the spring-loaded guns, it just strikes me as a kind of a, for those of us not familiar with something that classifies as a spring-loaded gun, I have no idea what you're talking about, but I have Nerf guns to shoot the squirrels.
Right.
Now that I can't go out and throw snowballs at them because I dislocated my shoulder. But I haven't hit any yet, so don't have
You're gonna be
anybody.
getting mail.
Huh? That's what I was thinking, so I'm gonna suddenly get mail. Shooting at the squirrels.
Stop digging, Tom.
Thank you. I guess we're done.
Sorry. So, if I may, just one other thing, just for a moment.
Yeah.
So, my term on the commission ends at the end of next month. I'm not intending to return, but this activity is going to continue for a while, and I am committed to seeing this to the end, whatever that end may be. So I just wanted to make you aware of that, so you might see me some more when it comes to that. And I will remain on the NRPC, so I'll still be
Good.
contributing
I was
to
gonna
our
say, you're
town.
disengaging from us.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I'm now a part of the executive committee on the NRPC, so I have extra duties there. And we have a great commission. We have a whole bunch of great new people.
Yeah,
You've
you do.
appointed some new people, and really it's time for someone else. You know, stepping to a alternate position allowed other people to step up. Steve is a great chair. He really is. So I think we're in good hands.
It's a great committee.
It is good.
And I'm not moving, I'm not going anywhere. They all have my phone number and email address, right, so, yeah.
Well, we certainly appreciate all the time and energy you put into the commission, to the town council, to various things around town. So thank you for that, and we'll keep you on a shorter leash than maybe you want to be on.
We know your number.
But thanks for that.
Yeah.
And thanks for being willing to stick out till we can get through this, just for the continuity's sake.
Mhm.
I appreciate that very much as well.
It's part of me now, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Very good.
Thank you, Tim. That was
Thank you,
great.
Tim.
Tim.
Thanks a lot, Tim, I appreciate it. Town manager's waving at people. Okay. That brings us to new business and a request to tap trees on Falcon Drive, town-owned parcel, submitted by resident Scott Delaback. Hope I got that right. You got it right. Scott Delaback is seeking the town council permission to tap maple trees in the town-owned forested area adjacent to his home along Eagle Drive. Is that right?
It is correct.
Okay.
Okay, there we go.
Now, is this parcel one of the Conservation Commission parcels, or just town-owned
It's not.
property?
I presented to them previously to make sure that it wasn't and that it didn't fall into their jurisdiction.
Okay, I just wanted to clear that
Mhm.
question out real quick before we started trying to get into other discussions. Thank you. So, tell us about what you want to do.
I had a presentation that I submitted. I don't know if it's
Yes.
on the laptop or if you all have seen it or
We
have
have,
it.
We have.
we have it.
Okay. So basically, it's a hobby that's gotten out of control. It's something I really enjoy doing, and I don't know why. I can't really explain it. I enjoy the outdoors. I'm outside all the time. It just started as a hobby in the driveway, and it's grown and grown and grown. I'm tapping trees on 4 locations in town. I collect the sap at night after work, stay up till midnight boiling it, and drag myself into work the next day. So as I'm getting older, and I know there's a few members of the council know I just recently had twins, so being home a lot more is something that my wife is greatly appreciative of. So I'm trying to just limit my exposure for the locations that I'm tapping at, just trying to really utilize the resources that are right there next to my house. So that's why I'm really asking. The piece of land is mostly pine trees. There's roughly 100 maples that I've walked through and counted. So it's not like a hillside that's covered in maple trees that I'm looking to utilize. They're sporadic. It's a lot of distance in between them. Just trying to use what's right next to the house, so I don't have to go so far.
So, talk about how what you would do would interfere with other people being able to use the property or not.
that's always been my main concern as well. Over the years, the neighbor that's across the street from me, the Seagens, them and their sons have hunted on the property for years. Mr. Seagen's gotten very old, he doesn't do it anymore, and the boys don't really come over and hunt. Out in the woods, there's a couple tree stands that have been there for years, that no longer get used, they're just laying there in the trees. Some of them are broken down and fallen on the ground. There really isn't any hunting activity, so to speak, and at that time of the year, there's no hunting going on anyway. I would tap the trees roughly the end of January, and taps would be removed by the 1st of April. That's when the season generally is.
Now, I thought I saw pictures with lines running and all that kind of stuff.
Yep, that's on my property now. That's what I have. I tried this year using what's the industry standard of a vacuum pump and the tubing that you see on all of the bigger places. Just wanted to see if I could get it to work. I like tinkering. I like figuring it all out. It worked really well for me, and that's why I decided to come to this step and see if I can make it a little bit bigger, because I can pump it right to a tank right underneath my back deck and go from there.
Okay, would those lines stay out year-round?
The lines would stay out, the taps would come out of the trees and be secured at the end of the season, but the lines do stay up because it's an expense to put them up and the time it takes to do that. The traditional way of using the buckets or blue bags that some folks use, they still use it, but on a very small scale. But as I've grown it and with the equipment I have now, it's counterproductive to not do it with a tubing system and a vacuum system.
So where do these tubes get placed? Are they 3-4 feet up, or are they 6 or 8 feet
They can be
up?
as high as I want. I use Vermont as an example because they get a lot more snow than us lately. They'll put the lines up 10 feet, and when they're tapping their trees, they can do it by just walking across the snow. By the spring, they're using ladders to pull the taps up. So it just really depends on the snow. But my goal would be they'd be above my head, so it doesn't stop any animals from going through or anything like that, or even hunters if they did want to go through. They're generally chest height or above is how you want to do it.
Okay. And they're bright blue or something so that they're obvious?
The main line is black. So if you look at the presentation, the main line that they all travel along is black. Its irrigation line is really what it is. The blue lines are the ones that cross and connect to it, and they are bright blues, so they're pretty easy to see.
Okay. And you go through a lot of information here. You want to tap approximately 100 trees, silver red, but not sugar maples?
We don't have any.
There aren't any sugar
Yeah,
maples?
there's none over there. They're really, a lot of people call them swamp maples, but a maple tree will give you sap. That's just the sugar percentage is a lot lower in the sap.
Okay. But obviously no cutting down of trees or heavy machinery?
Correct.
You're just going to walk?
Just walk it through.
Maintain it?
Yep.
Lines will be high enough for easy passage, marked for easy identification.
Yep, that was my plan. I'd hang some of the orange tape on them so that people
Okay.
could see them if they needed to, if there was any,
Now,
hunters
are they-
do go in early morning or something.
Are there any trails on
There
this
are,
property?
there are not. The only thing
really.
that's in there is an a storm overflow ditch that goes through. There's a DPW manhole cover, and there's an access point in the middle of the road. And other than that, there's no trails. You honestly couldn't get across anyway because it's about a 6-foot gully and it's full of water. So they'd have to drop a log or scuba dive across it or something.
Okay. Paul?
You're talking about keeping them, if some kid was running through the forest or running through the woods
Sure.
and hit the line, is it going to be like,
It's gonna be like a trampoline. He's gonna bounce off.
he's
it.
gonna bounce back?
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, that was my,
He's
yeah.
not getting his head cut off or anything.
He's not-
like that.
yeah,
No,
okay.
they're pretty sturdy, because actually, one of the lines that I put up this year was one of my new ones. A big tree did come down and fell across it. And as the tree came down, I thought it was gonna rip right out of the tree, right out of all the taps. But as soon as we cut the tree, it just sprung right back up. So it's not that hard that it's gonna ever hurt anybody.
Well, that's the blue lines, right?
That'd be the black line.
The black
The black
lines.
line, yeah. Blue lines are very stretchy. They're like a rubber band, so those are even more flexible.
Okay. I obviously haven't been on this property, so I don't really know. Visibility-wise, you're showing like one major blue line with a lot of green lines coming off of it. So you're not really talking about a network of these black lines that are gonna be around?
No, it would be, my vision is one main one that goes from my property and then like 3 branches out. And then from there, if I wanted to grow it, there's the Walsh family that owns the property on the back side of it, and they have it all posted for hunting and things like that. I'd probably have to talk to them if I wanted to do anything more, but their property is pretty much right on the other side of that drainage ditch.
For
Okay.
future growth.
So, why don't you talk a little bit about some of your other activities? Are you doing training or
Sure.
demonstrations or?
So I
things of that
hosted
nature?
Maple Weekend this year at the house, even though with the restrictions going on, last year it was canceled. Previously, I'd done a small thing. Anybody that wanted to come see it could see it. Last year, we canceled it. This year, I advertised a little bit more if people wanted to come over. I had a Girl Scout troop come by, a Brownie group come by. I've had Boy Scout troops come by. I know the state legislators from the town came by. They brought General, what's his name? Bolduc over. I enjoy showing off what it is. It's I grew up in Lawrence, Massachusetts. I'm from the projects, and for this to me is a kind of a strange thing. I don't know why I got into it. I'd never had real maple syrup in my life until I made it the first time.
Wow.
So I enjoy doing it, and I actually, now that I've learned so much, I like showing off the process. So I guess, I mean, Andy and his family came by. I probably had 100 people show up during Maple Weekend. It was a good time. It was really neat to show everybody how I do it and just have people ask questions. And
That brought a question, how many of us have to recuse ourselves? Because I buy the.
But
Go ahead.
we've done this only once before that I
Yes.
recall.
That-
And,
We were on at the 2010
yeah, was
9
it
and
2010, yeah. because
9 and
I
10.
remember the discussion, I did see the
Kennedy, yeah.
the
The
backup.
backup material here.
Stuff
yep.
here, and it brings back memories, you know. It's amazing how much you do remember when you read it through it again, but I'm not opposed to this. I would like the parameters that we did kind of set up on the first one. There's,
yeah, I read
protection to
about the
town.
liability and
Maybe
things like
6
that,
feet.
because I do have liability insurance, because I
hope
wanted
so.
to make sure if anything ever happened on my property, if somebody bought a bottle and dropped it and cut their arm or something, who knows? But I have got, it's a 7-figure policy, so I have pretty well covered.
Yeah, and then Paul would, I'm sure if the
A
council.
limit of
goes
liability
along
for the
this
town
road.
as well,
Mhm.
Yeah.
that we'd have
Yeah,
to
we
work
have
out
to-
Sure,
with
if
the
I sign
attorneys and stuff
whatever I
like
need
that.
to and get a copy of my policy.
Now, on the one,
Go ahead.
the one that we did before, it did have a height of the lines, they prefer
6
to be
feet.
6 feet, or 6 to 8 feet, or
Mhm.
basically above the head for most people. Also, there were distance parameters, but I don't know how big that lot is, how deep it is, and I don't know that that would be necessary in this one. The other one was against,
Yeah, my vision
Part
for
of Horse Hill.
Horse Hill, yeah.
So, and there was a trail that
The
goes
trails,
down,
right.
not that far away from it, so we didn't want him coming all the way into the trailhead or
That's right.
things of that. nature. So
Right.
that's why we restricted him to a certain distance
Right,
from
and
the
this one, I
property
think
line.
it is a different.
It's a diff- There's no
There's no
passive
hiking trails
activity
there
out
or
there
anything,
these
right.
days.
I mean, to be honest, there's old refrigerators back there, there's old tires, it's kind of just an unmaintained piece of property is really what it is.
Yeah.
If anything, I'd be cleaning it up a little bit, people could walk around to get, to check things out. So,
You'd be welcome to do that.
yeah, thank you, yeah.
Just to
Go
let you
ahead.
know, I had called Paul because I know we had dealt with this issue back in 2009 with Kennedy. And you're right, Finley, it had criteria that I totally agree with, should also be used. But I asked Paul if there had been any issues with that during, and has been repeated. And Paul, there was nothing.
Nothing that I could really find. There wasn't, I don't even know if they're still doing it, to be
I
quite
just wanted
honest
to
with
know
you.
if there was an issue that came up that we might
We
need
haven't had
to
any
address, and
issues.
apparently there
No.
wasn't.
That have come to the town.
No.
Barbara?
I will admit that I am a purchaser of maple syrup. And when I was out there and Scott was showing us how this was all going to work, I did kind of skirt that line over there to see, because the way the road kind of like circles around, and there really isn't any trails or anything through there. You have to like bring your bushwhacker and do it yourself because there's nothing there. So it's obvious to me that there's not a lot of traffic through that lot at all. So it might be nice to actually get some use out of it for someone.
Nancy?
Thank you. I hear really good things about that, Sarah.
I'm hearing it now, yeah.
I just have a couple of questions, because I wasn't here, and that was my question. Since it's town land and it's a private citizen having a business, basically, and utilizing town resources for their use, I didn't know that it had been done before. And I'm just wondering, were there time limits before? Was it a grant of a period of time, or?
The minutes really do reflect the kind of conversation we had, because that came up. And that was the first time this had ever been done. So we were very leery about it, but I think we decided that we'd give it a shot and find out. And that's why I wanted to follow up, to see if it worked out fine. And apparently it did, but you're absolutely right. Those were the things we discussed back then, too.
And I had another question. How long, Scott, are those, the black tap lines? Is that, the tap lines of the black, is that the black?
That's the main line. The blue
Okay.
lines would be called the lateral lines. So roughly, it really depends how far I want to go with it. I mean, the length of the property is about 100 yards.
Okay.
Deep into the woods, I'm gonna say it's maybe 100 as well. Probably not even that much. 1,000 feet of line, maybe.
Yeah. I was just thinking, because you said there's about 100 trees, so I was just trying to get a sense of, in the middle of all the, what's kind of space? that
Yeah,
was
I mean,
empty?
they're not, unfortunately, they're not like right next to each other. So it's gonna be one tree here, then 30 yards later will be another tree, then maybe there'll be 5 in a row, they're all 5 yards apart. It's really just following the land and seeing what's there. There's mostly pines.
Try to find.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other questions? So when I don't know if you saw the notes from 2010.
I did.
We asked Mr. Kennedy if he would be willing to do educational opportunities and
Mhm.
stuff, as you have indicated that you do. And you've also indicated that you make some contributions to different clubs
I do.
and whatnot. So you're actually giving back to the community, at least some of your proceeds.
Sure. Well, it's,
Through.
Yeah,
through-
for the
through
fundraisers
effort.
for the school sports teams, like they'll do the calendar, I've donated syrup to be one of the days for the prizes. I've given it to some of the cancer fundraisers in town, things of that nature. When anybody has asked me, I've given it to them.
So we would certainly appreciate that, especially given that some of it's gonna come off of town land, to
Right,
kind of
sure.
give back to the community.
Sure.
But I think the educational part, just to help people understand what maple sugaring is all about, it is a great situation, and I'm glad you were able to have some classes again this year, and I look forward to more coming up.
I hope everybody
when we-
comes next
When we
year.
get out of this stuff. Does anybody else have any other thoughts or questions, suggestions? So I think working with town staff, yeah, to get through the legal ramifications of holding the town harmless and things of that nature would be critical.
Sure.
Lines 6 feet in the air or better,
Mhm.
and stuff like that.
Ready?
Ready?
Okay. I'd like to make a motion to provide permission to tap maple trees in the town-owned forested area adjacent to, along Eagle Drive, and to meet the same, I'm willing to tweak this, I'm just not sure how to do it. And to meet the same legal and safety criteria determined during the Kennedy tapping in 2010.
Second.
Is that sufficient?
Motion made by Nancy and seconded by Lon Woods. Any other comments? Seeing none, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
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 Any opposed or abstaining? You're abstaining? Barbara, that passes 6-0-1 with Barbara Healy abstaining.
And I just have a curiosity question. What do your friends from Lawrence think of your?
They all think I'm crazy. They really
That's
do.
what I thought.
Yeah. Thank you all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your information, input.
Okay, this is the biggie. Yeah, it is. Biggie in terms of time.
So under new business, no, that was under new business. Under new business number 2, communication equipment upgrade presentation, submitted by Town Manager Paul McCallie. Town Council to be presented with a proposal to upgrade our communication systems to an 800 megahertz system to achieve a 95%.
There you go.
I'm done talking, I guess. Not, 95% emergency coverage for the town of Merrimack. Got it. I was just busting.
That was a
Sorry.
test.
We're gonna have to get desk lamps.
That's right. It looks like we're under black light here now, all of a sudden. It's
The blue screen.
that blue screen. Woo-hoo. I don't need that.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
I am going to, as so eloquently the police chief did to the deputy chief, I'm going to defer to the police chief and interject as the presentation goes along. But
As desired.
as for those that do not understand or know the structure, dispatch communication falls underneath the supervision of the police department. And the police chief, he's in charge of communications and radios and dispatch to the point of upgrading our old systems and things of that sort. And I will leave it at that and let the police chief take it from here. I also want to say that we do have the fire department, Chief Duke is here and Assistant Chief Harris and Deputy Chief Talton is here to back up the police chief with any questions you might have during this process, as well as he will introduce the gentleman to the left of, well, the right of the town council.
Well, thank you, Paul. Mr. Chairman, members of the town council, thanks for allowing me to speak on such an important issue. First, I'd like to introduce City of Nashua Radio Systems Manager Bill Mansfield and Motorola Account Manager Scott Cruikshank. If they'll be here for any technical questions, because they know the ins and outs.
'Cause
So.
they know those and you don't.
Right, so let me give you a little background first. The Merrimack Fire Department has experienced some critical radio issues lately. And over the past year, they've actually gotten worse. They have a hard time ability to receive and transmit from inside buildings, outside buildings, all over town. The police department does have some known areas as well that we have a hard time transmitting, which has always been the case. Currently, the fire department operates on a VHF analog voted system. The PD's on a VHF digital voted system. Now, if you remember 3 years ago, we did complete, we completed a radio project, which all of our equipment was replaced. That was basically a one-for-one. We were replacing old, aging equipment. It was in critical failure mode. We were actually borrowing pieces from other counties to make sure the system was still running. I believe this was first proposed in 2011, and it was just implemented about 3 years ago. Well, with that said, a lot of things have changed over the topography of Merrimack. Tree growth has increased. The number of large apartment buildings that have been put up have increased, and they're going to increase more. All these things can affect radio signals. You know, let's talk about tree growth. Ideally, all of our radio antenna sites would be above the trees, but we all know in a residential community like Merrimack, no one wants a radio tower in their backyard. So with that said, we began to explore some issues that might be able, some options that might be able to solve these issues. One of the major issues that we really see is inability to effectively communicate both police and fire, and more so on fire, in and out of large corporations in town, the Budweisers, Elbit, Fidelity. Even some of our schools, the middle school is known for no radio coverage up there. That's concerning, because if there's a critical incident, it's going to be chaos, and there could be a tragedy that comes out of it. We have to be able to effectively communicate with our dispatch, with our officers, with the fire department. They have firefighters that will be inside, if there was, say there was an actual fire, inside the burning building, one of these large structures, and some of the residents in town. They won't even be able to communicate to the engine outside. Now we're talking an engine that might be 25 feet from the door. That's how bad the radio coverage is in some of the areas of town. Now, when this system replacement was planned 3 years ago, or was planned probably 10 years ago, it was a prior administration. They decided to stay with analog signal because it had to do with their paging abilities to call back firefighters when they needed people to respond to the station, to cover engines and such. So they chose to stay in the analog. I'm not saying that wasn't the right or wrong decision, but that's why they stayed there and we went to digital. So we began to look at different ways of coming up with a possible solution to satisfy the radio coverage needs to make sure that it's safe for our employees. We began to look at what's called a simulcast system, where basically we generate some more sites. Currently we have 5 sites around town that have the voters up. We would generate 2 more additional sites in order to receive better coverage where we could transmit and receive more efficiently. We had Motorola propose, along with OME, our current vendor, propose a simulcast system along with another third party that we haven't used before. They quoted us on a simulcast system. They both came in about over $1 million, which is obviously a hefty price tag. The key to this is that Motorola would not back up, would not guarantee the coverage because our antennas are below tree level. So we started to try to become a little more creative and maybe see if there's other options for us to put our antenna on, such as cell towers and such. And fortunately, Scott from Motorola suggested Kessler Farms because he knew that the city of Nashua had just built a new tower over there, and to see if we could possibly gain some space in that tower and put a site up there for our simulcast system. Well, it was that point that the city of Nashua was nice enough to say, well, if you want to do this right, how about we test the 800 megahertz digital trunked radio system that the cities use? Manchester uses it, and Nashua uses it. The benefit of 800 megahertz is that it's a narrow bandwidth, so it's good at penetrating large buildings, which is why most cities have an 800 megahertz trunk system. So with that, we never thought this would ever be a possibility. Communities our size cannot afford a system like this. To do a system like this in our town, it would be $4.5 million. And that doesn't include the annual maintenance fees and such. So the fact the city of Nashua was willing to work with us is really a godsend because we really believe that this is the right way to handle this and how to solve most of our problems in the town here. So with that said, we began to test the radios. The city of Nashua was nice enough to lend us some portables. We ran around, tested our various known trouble areas, our known buildings that have a hard time receiving and transmitting, and found out that it worked very well. There was only one little small area by the lake, and that was like all the way down by the bottom of the driveway, next to the water, and it wouldn't go through. But there's other fail-safes for that too, and I'll get to that later. So with that, knowing that this is the best way, we had Motorola create some coverage maps, and they came up with a system that was 95% coverage throughout the town that they guaranteed, meaning that if there were issues, they come down and check it out and find out what the issue was going on. So at that point, we met with Town Manager McCallie, the fire department and I, and we all collectively agreed that this is the right way to handle the system.
If I could back up for a second, Chief. About a year and a half ago, the former town manager, Cabanel, put together a communication committee to look at some of this stuff. So, as the chief said, we've gone through several options. And it's taken us some time to help do the studies, read what we got back from the vendors, understand it to see if it was a possible solution. And when we started asking more and more questions, we found out that the VHF system was not a viable solution to help us in our needs. Like the chief said, this digital system basically fell in our laps. And this is, we started to pursue this more aggressively in the last 5 to 6 months, doing tests, looking at things of that sort. So this has been an ongoing process. I know for some people it's been a very slow process, but it's been a process because we, town manager, Cabanel, myself, prior, felt that we wanted to bring a system that we knew would work. And that's what we're bringing to you tonight, a system, an 800 megahertz system that we know will work for the town of Merrimack.
The other benefit of us going to an 800 system is interoperability with other communities. Now, VHF works off a different band, obviously, and 800 megahertz works off a different band, so we would have dual band radios. Right now, we can't talk to the city of Nashua in our cruisers. We border them for miles. So that's an issue for me. We have a what's called a consulate in our dispatch center where they can monitor it, but however, if Nashua came to Merrimack or we went to Nashua, they wouldn't be able to effectively communicate with us. That's a concern when you're bordering a town such as Nashua, and that we oftentimes will hear from them about suspected criminals that have gone across the town line, but it takes, by the time they phone us, they call us, we dispatch it out. Obviously, there's a delay in that. So if there was something serious that would happen, obviously interoperability would be much stronger. And also being interoperable with the city of Manchester as well for any critical instance that we might be involved in. So with that, I'll just bring up the...
Excuse me, would that also be true with the fire departments?
Yes, so, yes, correct.
Nashua, Manchester Fire.
Police and fire. The fire department's unique is because they currently do have some dual band radios for that interoperability piece that they can switch to.
Thank you.
Because it's more prevalent that they would respond to Nashua or Manchester for backup.
I must admit, I thought we have had discussions in the past about making sure that there was interoperability around the state and doing some things with radios to make sure that happens.
Correct. So
But that's
basically,
these dual bands that
there's
you're
now
talking
a set list of frequencies and channels that are on the frequencies. So everyone in, like, my radio, if I go up to, Concord, if I go up to Berlin, I can find the channels. That's more what they were talking about, is to make sure everyone was on a centralized platform. Ideally, the whole state would be an 800 system because it works the best. But we know there's a cost limitation behind it.
So what?
I said, I guess, $4.5 million?
Right.
So what, I don't know, so just briefly, VHF, do you or can somebody tell you what the band, frequency band is versus 800 megahertz? I mean, is it?
I will, I know, I'm going to defer to either Scott or Bill because they're the experts. I have basic knowledge.
Are we talking about 200 megahertz or 50 megahertz or, I mean, versus 800? Is that something to give us a feel for why it's so different or?
Bill Mansfield, City of Nashua.
Thank you.
So VHF is it stands for very high frequency.
Right.
And it runs in the 150, 150 megahertz range, okay? 800 megahertz, actually, when you buy an 800 megahertz radio, you can go from a 700 megahertz all the way up to, I think it's 869. So that's the span that we operate in today.
Isn't it true that at higher frequencies you have to be more line of sight? That you have to, more restrictions on what you can reach or get to, that analog or low frequencies tend to go over and around things better?
So VHF radio is prominent in the state of New Hampshire. The reason for that is most of the state of New Hampshire is rural. So VHF gives you long distance coverage, but it does not penetrate buildings. So that's the reason why the city of Nashua initially went with 800 megahertz, because we needed to have in-building coverage. And when you go to 800 megahertz, it finds the littlest hole and it can get into that building or get out of that building to be able to have the communications. So the city of Nashua has 3 sites in the city. We have 3 tower sites, and that's how we operate our radio system, was on those 3 sites.
And those 3 towers gives you the distance you lose going away from VHF? I mean,
they give us the building penetration that we need.
Right.
Right.
Okay.
We don't need distance. We need building penetration. So.
Okay. Thank you. I appreciate it. Just 800 megahertz, and I knew VHF stood for very high frequency, but I didn't know how high that was. Tom Mahon would have been able to answer that real easily,
Yes,
but
he would have.
he's not here anymore. He moved to Maine. But
Will just going off the Kessler Farms Tower with Nashua, will that give us the distance we need for the north end of town? Or is that why the lake is on the edge?
Right, so I'm going to get into that, but it's,
okay.
with Motorola's plan is to add another site in Merrimack
Okay.
to give us better and more complete coverage around town.
All right, sorry about that.
No, so with that, we'll just talk about the proposal for the 800 megahertz trunked system. As I said before, it guarantees 95% radio coverage for the town. It includes adding that receive transit site in Merrimack. There's 2 different locations we can choose from that would be adequate, Parker Road or Hutchinson Drive, where we currently have sites. And also it would be upgrading our consoles at the dispatch center, so to allow them to operate on the 800 megahertz system, so we can actually communicate with the officers and the firefighters with the system. And it also, a majority of this cost is because we don't currently have dual band radios at the PD. We have to swap over all of our radios to dual band, so we can still talk to the Bedford, the Amherst, the Hollis Police Departments who operate in the VHF. And it also be a duplicitous system for us that, not like Nashua, it goes down too often or hardly ever, but it would also be a backup for us as well, that we would still have a VHS system as well. So with that said, the large cost is the radios. That includes 45 portables, 29 single head mobiles, and mobiles are the one that goes in the vehicles, and 10 dual head mobiles, and that's simply a vehicle that requires 2 basically talking stations. So A fire truck might have a microphone in the cab, but they also have a microphone over by the pump station. So if they're outside the vehicle, they can still communicate. And we have a couple of those vehicles as well. Our command vehicle and our supervised vehicle has a dual head bin. So the total cost, minus the outdoor cabinet on the bottom, is roughly $1.26 million. Okay, so I'm gonna break that down a little bit further. I know it's a scary number, but we'll go through it here. So City of Nashua site requirement for us to join the system is a robust communication shelter, which costs approximately $125,000. Now, this would include a 10-channel site, microwave link, a direct current powered equipment, a DC power with 8-hour battery backup, climate control, that's heat and AC, concrete building large enough to house the new equipment on older VHF equipment, a propane generator, and obviously a propane tank to support the generator, purchase the equipment to mount the 800 megahertz system at whatever water tank we use, certain grounding certifications, and obviously allow key access to Nashua Communications. Now, I just want to show you what our current communication shelter looks like. It is very inadequate. Looks like some of that belongs at a ball field to store bats and balls and gloves. There's no really good AC protection in there. As a matter of fact, a lot of times we have to go up there in the summertime and put a floor fan in because the little, if you look on the right-hand side of the wall, the right picture on the right wall, that's all the ventilation we have is a small little circular fan that's hooked up to the wall. So it gets very hot in there. And as you know, this expensive equipment, electronic equipment, cannot be subject to high and low temperatures, which right now it currently is. To get a better picture of what the communication shelter that they're asking that we build for the system, this is the location at Kessler Farms. As you can see on the top left, that's a large concrete structure. The two doors on the far left, as you're going away from the picture, that's where the equipment is housed, and the other door is where the generator is housed. We took a few photos inside. As you can see, it's very orderly, neat. There's plenty of airflow. The picture on the right is basically the racks where the radio equipment would be stored, along with the microwave. And the picture on the bottom is the direct current power. Those black batteries, the wall bank, that's how the power comes in. You don't, excuse me, obviously you want to make sure it's stable power. That's why you don't want to use AC power, because you want to make sure it's stable because it is electrical and you're dealing with radio frequencies. So, as we further discuss with
So the $125,000 is to build another one of these buildings that would house our equipment, or?
correct, in our town. So we're
In our town?
in our town. So basically, Motorola's plan is to support the system with a site in Merrimack. So that's part of the initial $1.2 million to support that site. The additional cost would be the structure.
Okay, so that site would be at the tower that would get constructed in?
Whichever place we decide, Parker or
wherever that
Hutchinson,
is,
correct.
yeah. Okay,
So we further discussion with the city of Nashua to see how this would work as far as payment goes. So the total annual cost for the entire project with the site in Merrimack is $68,000. That includes a system upgrade agreement. It's currently at approximately $27,000. We in Merrimack never had a system upgrade agreement, which is common for agencies our size. However, when you upgrade, you need to purchase all the previous core upgrades. So we basically, you just wait till you do the project, and then they'll charge you with all of the core upgrades to get to that where you should be. So we've really never done that before. And this cost would ensure the latest software installed and saving money down the road. It also, every 2 years, they come out and start swapping out components. So you're not left with the hefty bill of $1 million every 10 years or 5 years or whatever. So you're paying on an annual basis. Every 2 years they come through, they swap out components to ensure you're operating the best way. And this fee would only apply after the first year of the project because the first year is guaranteed. Annual preventive maintenance, security upgrade services, SUS. That's basically the technical support agreements with Motorola. If there's any issues, they'd be able to help us out with that. Now, it's important that both these fees are only related to the components in Merrimack. Nashua has their own SUA fee and SUS fee. We would be paying for our portion. So we're not contributing to anything in the city of Nashua. We're paying for the dispatch center and our site in Merrimack. That's where those fees come from.
We're paying that to Nashua?
It will be going to the city of Nashua because it's their radio system, so they'll be cutting the check for the whole
So they're expanding their system and putting it in
Correct.
Merrimack.
So we're just paying for the pieces that are in Merrimack. Nothing Nashua will be, and Nashua then pays Motorola. There'll be a user fee for utilizing its infrastructure. It'll be $20 per month per radio on the system. It's about 130 radios at $20 per month, which is $2,600 a month or $31,000 annually. This is obviously because we are using their system. And that's quite the savings because, you know, we would now no longer be relying on an outside vendor to come service us. It would be Nashua, they would take care of it. If they couldn't do it, I'm sure they'd reach out to Motorola, but we would no longer be using Ospey Mountain Electronics. They would be cut out of this picture. And we do have services that we use and we spend money throughout the year with them when things break. And they also indicated that any overtime costs associated with the use of City of Nashua radio communications personnel. However, there's no anticipated overtime costs as most work would be performed during normal business hours. So with that said,
Before we go on,
Yeah.
so this is $68,000, which is a recurring yearly cost. It's a large number. However, remember, we're putting about $125,000 into Communication Capital Reserve Fund. And most of that money goes towards upgrading our system every 7 to 10 years. The last time we did the upgrade 5 years ago cost the town $625,000 to just get the equipment that was end of life current. That isn't to improve our system, that was just to get us back to current. We have this money set aside in a capital reserve fund. Some of these costs for this total recurring, we could take away now because we wouldn't need to budget in that capital reserve fund. And we could shift it over to the budget. So it would come out of the capital reserve fund, it'll go over into the budget amounts. Tax rate would be neutral. Just want to let people know that we're not trying to increase the budget.
So that would be the annual stuff?
The annuals,
Okay.
excuse me, the annual stuff, this annual maintenance. So it's going to be basically budget neutral, it's just changing pots where it comes from.
Right.
Just want the council to understand that and people to understand that.
May I ask a question for
Yes, ma'am.
clarification? I just want to be able, I want you to help me if I'm right or wrong on this. There are two issues. One is the coverage of the town.
correct?
How much, at the present time, what is the percentage of coverage of the town?
I can't give you a percentage. I can tell you the areas of town, like the southwest areas down by Nashua Corp, that DW Highway area, Bowers Landing area, up north by the lakes, struggles. You know, there's, for some reason, Meeting House Road by Amherst, it's there too. It depends on the topography of the town, and
Okay.
every day it seems like we're getting a new location that we're having a hard time with, especially on the fire side.
Okay, so that's one issue.
Correct.
But the second issue, which to me is even more imperative, is the lack of communication inside a building and out. So if you have a Mayday situation, there's no way of, if something's happening inside a building and they need help, they can't communicate that they need help to the outside?
This is correct, absolutely correct, and that's what's
To me,
concerning.
that's the worst.
That's what's
of the
concerning.
two.
And like I said, I mean, we all see the news on the national level where, you know, active shooters are happening almost on a weekly basis now.
Whether it be fire or police.
Fire, police, wherever. I mean, it's also protecting the citizens that work in our town, or the communities that come here to work in our town. It's concerning, you know, that we can't talk down in Fidelity, or we can't talk at Elbit, or, I mean, even the middle school. That's concerning enough.
Now, what's happening, I think I remember reading somewhere in the packet, something about, something can be put in new development. Is it an enhancer or something?
So I'll speak, if Matt can correct me, but.
If you're gonna bring it up
so-
later, just tell me you'll bring it up later.
No,
'Cause you
it's,
don't have-
so
okay.
basically, National Fire Code requires large buildings to put in what's called bidirectional amplifiers.
Amplify it, that's,
Um,
okay.
We now just recently put it back in our town code as well.
Because I'm thinking of all these new developments, that should be part of the automatic installation.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, the police chief is very close. It is a component of the NFPA code. The reason why we haven't enforced it for a while is the state tends to not adopt the most recent version of the code. The state of New Hampshire tends to run a code cycle or two behind. So when the state adopted the most recent version of the code, we became able to enforce that. And what that allows us to do is require, as the chief said, new construction to test the need for a bidirectional amplifier and install it if the testing shows the need.
Which stimulates a question for me as chief, so stay right where you are. Just out of curiosity, it just initiated a question in me. So the state has codes. Can a town make stricter codes than the state? Or is the state the max?
In some cases, yes. I don't want to make a blanket yes or no to that. There are cases when we can enforce stricter codes than what the state requires.
Okay, so your intention is, from this point on, any new development will have the amplifier part of the code?
So yes, the buildings that have been constructed since that code was enacted, we've tested whether the bidirectional amplifier is needed. It isn't needed in every building, and some of that depends on the coverage and adequacy of the radio system in general. So if the radio system is better, the likelihood of needing an amplifier in the building may go down. The other thing that plays into that is, as Mr. Mansfield pointed out, the construction of the building. Wood frame buildings, apartment buildings, the radio coverage in and out, particularly with an 800 megahertz system, is better than concrete, steel, specifically shielded buildings that are designed to prevent things like radio signal and data from being transmitted in and out. So those, the testing would bear that out, where the bidirectional amplifiers are needed and where they're not.
But with the new development, most of them are metal, right?
Most of the apartments are wood
They
frame.
are,
Yeah.
okay.
There is a little bit of structural steel in them, but excuse me,
Okay.
primarily they're wood and sheetrock.
Thank you. I'm sorry to interrupt, but
No, there's lots of questions
No,
to be
but
asked.
that does beg a question, and maybe from a light perspective, it's a little bit more confusing. You talked about two things. One is town coverage and using towers at Kessler Farms and somewhere in Merrimack to be able to get better coverage. But then you talked about being able to talk in and out of a building between a firefighter in the building and the truck outside. Are those the same thing, or are they two separate things?
Correct, that will solve both issues.
it's two separate.
So how, it sounds like two separate issues, and so how is it solving both issues?
Because we tested it with the Nashua portables inside buildings, using the tower at Kessler Farms, and we could get in and out of the building.
So the portable is talking to the tower, and the tower is talking back to the truck? We're not talking 100 feet between the two units?
Correct. Correct, which is even more powerful to know that.
Which is very confusing, and that's why I'm trying to bring up the
I
question.
completely understand, Mr. Chairman. So yes, so that, once they transmit from inside a building where they test at Budweiser, Fidelity, whatever, that was then going to the tower at Kessler Farm, and then coming back to our dispatch center where the device was installed. It would be even greater when the truck is right outside, because then they're gonna be communicating back and forth.
They got, what?
They'll be able to communicate back and forth.
Directly.
Knowing that they can hear the person inside, they can then respond to the request, and that's still going off wherever tower is closest.
So it's not a direct communication between the person in the
It's like
in
a
the
cell
building
phone. It
and
has to go to
the
the-
Correct.
truck? Because
Correct.
that's the impression that I get and that other people, I think, get when they see people complaining that, you know, firefighters are in the building and they can't talk to the truck outside. Well, shoot, it's only 100 feet. How come you can't talk to them? And it's not a factor of the strength of the radio between those two units. It's a completely different factor of being able to communicate from that personal radio out to the tower and then from there back to the truck.
Correct, unless the truck's equipped with special equipment. So they could be equipped with an amplifier, they could be equipped with a repeater, in our case for a VHF system. But yes, that's correct. So it has to hit the tower. The way our current system was, it looks for the closest tower or whatever the best tower is to go off of, and then that's voted off of.
So it's like if I'm calling you 20 feet away from me with a cell phone, it has to go to a satellite and come back to you.
Correct. We don't have a can and string between us to be able to say that'd be direct. It has to hit something.
Not if we want to understand each other.
Yes. Does that help?
Thank you.
But you do have a radio and a receiver, and the perception I think people get is that those two can talk to each other.
Right.
And how come our radios are so poor that somebody inside the building can't talk to the truck outside?
I think
And that's
Councilman,
not what is going on. It's the radio has to talk to some tower somewhere, and that tower has to talk back to the
To
truck.
simplify, like Councilwoman Harrington said, the cell phone example is a great point. You're not calling, I'm not calling her right now from here. It's going off to a tower, probably at Columbia Circle, and then coming back down.
But the megahertz couldn't get the signal out because it was being blocked.
The megahertz system worked
I mean, is.
Yes.
Prior to this time, you couldn't get the signal out of the building
because
to get to a tower.
the VHF band would not exit the building.
And he has an explanation. He's going, oh, this is just like Nashua.
Just to give you an example, so in 2000, the city of Nashua built the 800 megahertz system. That's the first iteration of it. We've already upgraded it 2 times since that point in time. The fire department in Nashua operated on VHF radios before 2000, prior to 2000. A firefighter showed up to a fire scene. They go in the building. The firefighter would key up his radio in the building, talk to a fire truck outside. That person on the fire truck outside would then have to rebroadcast that out to the dispatcher so the dispatcher knew what was going on. With the 800 megahertz system, what you're doing is you're talking on the radio and everybody's hearing what's going on. So there's none of this telephone going on, passing the message
It's
along.
immediate communication.
Correct. It's immediate communication. So I don't know if that clears it up, but basically, when you key up the radio now, it goes out to the towers rebroadcast it, send it out to everybody that's on that channel.
Okay, thank you.
I hope I didn't make things confusing.
It's okay. So with that said, ideally, we should implement, my wish is to implement this whole system right now with the site in Merrimack. However, talking to Town Manager McCallie, we understand that's a large bill. So there's a way that we could also approach this, which I think would be acceptable way, and the fire department also concurs, is a phased-in approach. Step one would be basically to do that large purchase of all the portables and mobiles, outfit all of our personnel with them, our vehicles with them, and simply upgrade the Merrimack Dispatch Center to allow us to talk on the 800 system. And we'd be utilizing the Kessler Farms tower, Nashua's tower. We know that that's not complete coverage in town of Merrimack. However, the testing we've done since the foliage has come in, it is still better than the system we're operating right now. And the fire department acknowledges that. They're able to get in and out of buildings. They're able to hit the south end of town. So we would propose going to the 800 system, purchase the portables and the mobiles, upgrade the Merrimack Police Department Communications Center to allow us to talk on the 800 system. And the total cost for that project is $684,000.
So $684,000 is a large nut. However, this year, the town of Merrimack is very fortunate and poised that we can take that out of this current 2020-21 operating budget, which ends up by June 30th. The reason being is because of salary savings in both police and fire, as well as some insurance savings in those departments as well. Some of the salary savings are from what we talked about earlier about the FEMA reimbursing us. The ARA, the Gopher money, reimbursing us. We're able to utilize some of that to get this system up and running. And we can do this by hopefully, if Motorola comes through with the radios and we can get them programmed, by early summer to get this up and running as soon as possible. And that is our plan. If your council approves this purchase of $684,000, we'd get with Motorola in the next day or so with a purchase order to buy this equipment to get it here in Merrimack. Now, the other thing on this equipment, it does not include trade-in. We're still working out on the trade-in for the radios of the police department to see if there's some kind of benefit or some kind of amount of money that we can get for all the radios, 44 radios that the police department have that are with some kind of trade-in with Motorola that can be utilized in other departments. They can repurpose them and use them in other departments. So we're trying to work with Motorola to get a trade-in allowance for those as well. So, But just that you know, this money is, we have the money because of FEMA and because of the COVID money, because of the reimbursements we got for some salary dollars. So there's some salary savings in both departments, and that's why.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions?
So, maybe you're gonna go there, so I'll wait for you.
Okay, so step 2 of this project would be installing a location in Merrimack. That would involve completing that communication structure per city Nashville specs, creating the Merrimack site for 800, and the total cost for step 2 is $697,000.
Which my plan is to bring that $697,000 through the budget process and discuss during the budget process. If you recall, during some of the budget process, we have earmarked fund balance for certain categories. Some is for tax relief, some was for equipment, some was for roads, things of that sort. Some of this $697,000 would be coming from some of that earmarked money from fund balance. But we will discuss that when we discuss the budget. But in my bringing this forward, and we talked about it, it's around $1.4 million. I do not have that much money in this current fiscal year. So that's why we're breaking out into a 2-phase approach. We can get the radios, we can get the fire department up on these radios, we can get the police department up on these radios, improve our communications right now. When we do step 2, Motorola then guarantees 95% coverage in town. And we can still be up on these radios. If we do this now, we can be up on the radios approximately 18 months sooner by doing it in this 2-phase approach than trying to do it all at once. And the reason why I'm bringing it forward is several reasons, as the chief has said, but the security and safety of residents and our staff is one of the major reasons why we're bringing this forward right now, is the communications and being able to talk with one another. So that's why I'm bringing it forward in this stepped approach and not as a one big lump sum in a budget.
So,
Go ahead.
so with this adjustment of doing it in phase approaches, those payments to the city of Nashua will be different because we're not paying for the site that we have, that we want to do for the complete project. So just real quick, the SUA would now be $16,000. The SUS, the security upgrade services, would be $44,000. The user fee is still the same, so the total recurring annual cost with this portion of it would be $52,000. However, it wouldn't start until after the first year, correct, Scott? These still wouldn't start until after the first year, right?
So what, when is step 2 thought about happening?
Ideally, I do right now, but.
Well, I know you did. But you just broke it out and you just told me we're gonna pay less while we're in step 1, so I'm just wondering.
After a year of completion of the project. So they come down, they install the dispatch center, we have our radios, 1 year out from there.
So about a year. So this lower number is just a 1-year number after the
After
first
1
year.
year, yeah.
Right.
There's no
But
cost.
it's not ongoing, then we go back to the 62,000 or something like that.
Correct. But this total recurring cost, annual cost, 52, is after a full year of using the product.
Okay. Are there other questions, Nancy? No? Lon?
I'm willing to make a motion, but I'll wait till everyone's done.
Lon?
Yeah, my curiosity's been somewhat tweaked. Thank you, Nancy. The only concern that I have is how solid is the agreement with Nashua to use the Kessler Farms Tower? I mean, this is all understandable, all, as Paul said, I think the most succinctly.
Correct.
It redounds to the safety and welfare of the citizens of the town of Merrimack. That's fine. I see Mr. Mansfield heading for the mic already, so I guess I'm going to get an answer to my question.
Correct.
Hope so.
You usually do, don't you?
Somebody venture.
So this proposal had to be brought up with various entities within the city of Nashua. So I have a radio committee in the city of Nashua. That radio committee consists of the fire chief, the police chief, one of the board of aldermen, the IT director. There's a variety of us. They listened to the proposal, they agreed with it, and then it was brought to the mayor of the city of Nashua. The mayor was in total agreement in doing this. He's the one who asked to set the fee at $20 per radio per month. We don't have a written agreement. There will eventually be a written agreement due to the fact that the largest thing that we have to make sure is that we're in sync with each other is that SUA. So whenever I get an upgrade, you have to get the upgrade at the same time. So, and that has to be in writing so that we don't have any issues with that in the future. So I recently, in April, I just received my latest upgrade, so I will not get another upgrade for 2 more years. So, but hopefully we'll have a written agreement and we will make sure legal sees it on both sides and hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
And make s'mores.
It makes s'mores.
Without a fire.
Is that how they do it in Nashville?
Not on conservation land, though.
Not on Wildcat.
So I think that's a very good, do you have more questions, or?
So a length of time will be just like writing a contract.
Correct.
And that hasn't begun yet?
No, we have not discussed with the city of Nashua, the mayor's office, what the length of contract is. I liken this agreement to similar agreement of using the city bus that we do. That's a contract that we discuss, and it's an agreement between the city of Nashua and the town of Merrimack. And it's, even though it's a year by year, it's a longer term agreement that we know that if we are investing in this system, city of Nashua, you have plenty of excess capability because they wouldn't give it to us and say you can use our band if they were thinking that 5 years down the road they were going to need that. So I would have to, I hate to make an assumption, but I'd have to assume that we'd have an agreement with Nashua that's an extended agreement over several years that this would work out. It wouldn't be a 1 year, one and done. It would be, because of our investment of $1.4 million, I would like to see the contract with the city of Nashua be over several years.
Yeah, I'm somewhat familiar with, the radio towers, and I think the agreement that I recall working with spanned 10 to 15 years. Is that a reasonable?
So that, if I can interject,
Sure,
Mr. Chairman.
please.
So I think what you're talking about is a tower contract. You're not leasing a tower. You're basically being authorized to use not just Kessler Farm, it's our entire radio system. So there's 3 sites in that system.
Okay,
And they're all connected together and they have to sync together. So you're using the radio system. So you're not renting a tower. You could do a contract for as long as you want, as long as the town agrees to it, as long as the city of Nashua agrees to it. So should be simple enough, I hope.
But one of the questions that came up would be bandwidth or availability of that shared space. And you don't see, or you've built a big enough system that's bigger than Nashua's needs as far as you can see, and therefore there is some extra space available that Merrimack can piggyback in.
Right, so, and that's a great question because it's the same question the radio committee asked. So right now, we have a 10-channel radio system in the city of Nashua. That 10-channel system is shared by every entity in the city. It's shared by the school department, the parks department, DPW, Police, fire, EMS, everybody in the city uses that. We have talk groups on there. So I don't want to get too deep into this because it can get really confusing with people, but we utilize talk groups, and these talk groups are, so DPW has like 5 talk groups. Police department has 10 talk groups. The fire department has 12 talk groups. Even though we only have 10 channels, we're sharing those channels. You don't know it, we can't hear each other, but one person keys up the radio, when he unkeys that radio, that channel's open, so it continually goes down the line. The space on that right now, with adding on Merrimack, is not going to overload the system. So let's just put it that way. But I wanted to get a little more of that. We're using actually trunking. It's a trunking system, so we're using talk groups on radio channels. So.
You want me to make a motion? Is that what you're saying?
Andy wanted to say something, is that right?
Yeah, that doesn't, just to be able to clarify for that. Sometimes what we do too is we make a motion and then we discuss. So,
Well, that's
right?
theoretically the way it's supposed to go.
It's supposed to be.
But
We don't do things.
we don't tend to
that way.
follow that as much as we should.
Lon asked one of my questions, and it was a good question, so thank you. The system upgrade agreement, does that mean that we're never in a situation where we've got to buy an upgraded software license?
So the system upgrade agreement, the way that is today, it pays for all your software and any hardware changes to the infrastructure, not portables or mobiles. It's for your infrastructure. So my last upgrade, I had servers replaced. I had, matter of fact, the upgrade before I had my consoles replaced, all the PCs for the consoles. It covers everything soup to nuts.
No obsolescence.
No, correct.
Wow.
So, very surprising from,
Yeah.
I hate to say it, from Motorola that they do that, but they do it. I know, you're right.
I'm not coming out of his pocket, so.
That's all I have, Mr. Chairman. Thank you.
Okay. Barbara?
Yes, regarding the annual preventive maintenance, what's included in that? So you've got all the radios, you've got,
I'm not sure what the preventative maintenance would be. Oh, the preventative maintenance, okay.
and
I'm
secure,
trying to remember
the security
that.
upgrade system, we just got through talking
Right.
about that one.
So the annual preventative maintenance only deals with preventative maintenance on the consoles at this point in time. The radio consoles in the dispatch center. That's all it would deal with. So if you went to and you added the site, annual maintenance would be preventive maintenance of them going out there and making sure the antennas are correct, that it's tuned right, the radios are tuned right, and things like that. But at this point in time, it would just be the consoles.
So the communication shelter and the equipment therein, that gets upgraded how?
So
As part of what Motorola does?
no, that is your building, and it's your responsibility to maintain that. So I have 3 buildings in Nashua. I have preventive maintenance done on that. I have a HVAC contractor that comes out. That's totally separate. Generator, I have them come out and do preventive maintenance once a year.
Right.
And that's pretty much all I do with the building, so.
So the $20 a month per radio that you said the mayor asked for, is that number is that backed up by something, or is that just a
So
guesstimate of some value?
I belong to an organization that it's nationwide, and it deals with systems like ours across the country.
Okay.
And I'm constantly communicating with them, too much, on a monthly basis. And we have conversations about things like this. So what I did is, a lot of agencies across the U.S., they run a statewide system. So the state is responsible for the system. When the state's responsible for the system, they pretty much give the users free access to the system because they're getting funds and taxes and whatever it may be. There are other communities that do it the way that we're looking at doing it, and by going at a per user charge, and that's pretty much what it comes down to, a per user charge. And the rates go from $10 to $30. So, and that's the highest I've heard is $30. And again, that was explained to the mayor, and the mayor says, well, let's charge $20. So that's where the number came up from that. So.
Split in the middle.
Okay. And does that cover our portions of the expenses in Nashua enough that we're not gonna have a citizen of Nashua start complaining that Nashua's given Merrimack services and things of that nature? I mean, are we paying our fair share so that we're gonna be in the clear?
You know what? After a year goes by, I can actually tell you how many times an officer or a firefighter has pushed the talk, his radio. I can tell you how much usage you've had on the radios. I can do it on a monthly basis. So I can tell you what the usage is, and I think that if something came up in the future, I could actually show the comparison between what we use and what they use, but we don't have that now. So we're just going by what other people are charging and what they're doing. So I can't answer that question of whether somebody's gonna complain or not. So
I'm just trying to make sure we're not walking into a swamp that we don't want to be in, and that we're all being above board and we don't have anything to hide.
Nope, transparency is great.
Pardon?
Transparency is great.
Yeah, and so Nashua was very comfortable with the fact that they've got enough bandwidth or enough space to do that. I don't know if you're looking at other communities in your, Hollis Brookline or others that might want to do something like this. Would you offer that service, or pardon?
I have enough work.
Well,
I wasn't looking for this either.
I guess is part of the question I'm asking.
Yeah, so we're not looking for anybody else to jump on the system. If somebody else wanted to jump on the system, that's another conversation
That would be a
we would have
different
to have.
conversation, right.
So.
Okay. Thank you, I appreciate it. Are there any other questions, especially from Mr. Mansfield? Barbara?
So the expectation is that Merrimack would also have to build a communications shelter to hold the racks that we would be using here.
Correct, that's
In
why
Merrimack.
in the first quote from Motorola, it mentions an outdoor cabinet. That would just be something on the outside of a building. It's not feasible. And, thankfully Nashua's allowing us to have this opportunity, and we should respect their wishes and build the correct structure. That way it's
Absolutely.
protecting our equipment, their equipment.
Absolutely.
And there's no issues down the road.
I guess my question is, there are two guys who, you're running the Nashua system. Are we gonna need our guy to run the Merrimack system? How does that work?
And correct me if I'm wrong, Bill, but by paying that user fee, that's what we're doing.
Okay.
Is that we're,
So these guys get to come to Merrimack.
If we need to, we really don't visit the sites that often unless there's some type of alarm that's going off.
Okay.
Depending on the type of alarm, we may have to call in a Motorola tech to work on that.
Yeah.
We wouldn't do that. We would have to figure out how we're going to do that. That's one little thing that we have to figure out once we decide that we're going to build that facility. If it's something, a minor alarm, which is a generator alarm or something, we're going to respond to it. We're going to take a look at it and see what the issue is.
Yep.
So.
Great. Have you done this with any other town surrounding the area?
No, we haven't.
Well, I thank Nashua for this opportunity.
Absolutely. This is
huge,
like, it's
and I'm-
great.
I'm thrilled to death that we're able to do this,
I think
because there's no
there's-
way we could spend $4.5 million
exactly,
on it.
and through this whole thing, Bill, City of Nashua has been great, and Motorola's been great, and the fact that you just afforded this opportunity, and it all came from Scott saying, hey, let's check and see if we can put an antenna on that tower, and then the City of Nashua basically saying, and Bill specifically.
Why do
so
that? Why don't you use this one?
Just
Yep.
get on our
Yeah,
system,
no,
and
I appreciate it.
and the way I look at it too, it's going to alleviate obviously a lot of problems.
It'll help
It's going to
them
create
too.
a safer environment for both sides of the house, police and
That's right.
fire. And no offense, but it's kind of out of our hands now, so we don't really have to worry about it. It's going to be City of Nashua and we're paying a
And
fee.
also, we might be able to help Nashua too, with the communication.
Correct.
Both ways.
I think Bill's system in Nashua is pretty robust, but it will, effectively increase interoperability if Nashua's coming to us assist. As you know, that, typically when we have a special response team call out, we typically call Nashua depending on area of town. They come out. Now we can all be in the same channel. There's no grabbing one portable here, one portable there. It's confusion. The capabilities of the system is pretty outstanding.
But vice versa too.
Correct.
being able to help Nashua.
Correct.
And I think there is a encouraging philosophy in this scenario, is that there really should be some regionalization of towns and cities working with each other, one hand, you know. In this instance as an example, but I think there are other examples that we could use as well.
Absolutely.
For the financial assistance for both sides.
Absolutely. I think, like I said, the regional partnerships are great. The days of doing things on your own just doesn't really make sense. It's coming up with the new records management system. You know, the state went with the system. We're still exploring, but I'm encouraging other communities around us to use the same system. Why are we all doing our own thing? We should be able to share information freely. It gets the job's done more efficiently and more knowledge for all the officers out there.
That's right.
If I may.
Yes.
I just want to say that when I brought this to the mayor of the city of Nashua, he said to me, he said, "Why would we want to do this?" And then he thought for a second, he goes, "Well, I guess it's being a good neighbor." And that's what it really comes down to, it's being a good neighbor.
Well, I
So,
appreciate it, yeah,
I agree.
definitely.
Yeah, and we've tried in a few small ways to be a good neighbor as well. So, I mean, that's a great opportunity, and we appreciate that. Thank you. Nancy?
Okay.
Paul, what kind of a motion do we need?
Just basically allowing us to purchase the radios out of this year's budget.
I have a motion that might cover.
All right, going,
It might not, and you can correct me.
I'll let you know.
The amount of money, though, was $684,000?
Yes.
Okay. I approve the expenditure of no more
You
than
approve.
600. The
You said I
council,
approve? Okay,
meaning the council.
sorry.
I have no authority.
Just
We
what?
approve the expenditure of no more than $684,000 to establish the recommended communication improvements for the Merrimack Police and Fire Department. Does that cover it?
Yes. Oh, and the town manager or his proxy.
To sign any necessary paperwork.
Yes,
That has to be
an
part,
agreement.
yeah.
Second, including legal review.
That should be it, including legal review. And we need a second?
I
Second.
seconded it.
Over there.
My first, Randy seconded? Okay, good. Now that we've talked about it for the last 45 minutes, is there any other discussion on this before we go to a vote?
I wouldn't dare.
I'll call for a vote then on the motion to approve this process. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? With thanks and gratitude to the city of Nashua and to the police and fire department for all the work that they've done.
Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Committee, yeah.
There, we want to,
And Motorola.
yes. So that's the equipment part of the house. We just want to inform the council because we appreciate it. Thank you very much for letting us go forward with this. There is a personnel portion of dispatch as well. And we didn't want to throw the council off guard
No, do that.
with it. So when I was looking at this, we were talking about the equipment, and in the last couple of meetings, I said, but you need to look at dispatch and the dispatch center and the personnel in the dispatch center. So the chief has come forward with a proposal that you'll see in next year's budget proposal. And I don't want to blindside you, so it's a proposal, and we're looking to hire an additional dispatcher for the midnight shifts. So right now, we run 3 dispatchers during the day. We run 2 dispatchers at the
Second shift.
second shift and 1 dispatcher for third shift. What we're looking to do now is run 3 during the day, 2 second shift, and 2 on third shift.
The only thing I'd like to request, because it's the same thing we asked for the fire department, is bring us some data.
And we will.
Correct.
We will,
So,
but
I
we
mean,
didn't want.
literally, numbers of calls per shift, so that we can help justify.
Yes, and we'll have all that laid out in the budget, but like I said, we didn't want you to be all of a sudden during budget season, wait a second, we just approved this, you're asking for 700, now you want another $78,000 for a body as well.
Right.
We just wanted the council to know that dispatch is equipment and personnel as well. So, Thank you.
So the two are not related. You want that person regardless of whether we go with the 800 megahertz system.
Yes,
Correct.
that
Okay.
that would be the plan, to go
The
with
confusion is that you're kind of tying the two together, and that's not really the
No,
situation.
but it's, we're tying the
Okay.
whole dispatch in together.
Right.
They're two separate issues.
Outlined in the last page.
Okay,
Thank you.
I'm good. Just wanted to bring it out.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Good night.
All right, item. Well, we're good at clearing the room, I'll tell you.
Major, I agree. And there should be,
Did you hear that?
Okay, item number 3 on our agenda, Merrimack Village District requesting letter of support to NHDES regarding well MVD 6. MVD was planning to have Jamie Emery come to help present this, and he's unavailable tonight. So they've asked that we table this to the June 10th meeting. So if I could get a motion to table to June 10th?
Second.
Moved by Finley, seconded by Barbara. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed, abstaining? That's tabled to June 10th. Brings us to item number 4, release of capital reserve drainage improvement funds. Submitted by Deputy Public Works Director, Town Engineer Dawn Tuamala. Dawn's changed.
So instead of like the police chief giving it to the deputy chief, Dawn, the deputy DPW, gave the job, delegated to Kyle, the
Delegated it right away, huh?
to do it, so.
You got the short straw. We got the short straw, you got the,
Fair enough.
oh, I didn't mean it that way.
didn't sound
No, we have the whole meeting. You
Fairly accurate,
technically don't have to stay for the whole meeting. Time to stop digging, right?
So I am gonna let
It's
Kyle.
more fun.
If you remember, Don came when we were doing the CIP. Don came about the Joppa Road drainage for those that were on the council when we did the CIP in November. She came in front of you and talked about doing the drainage in Joppa Road in a phased-in approach. The company who won the bid for the Turkey Hill Roundabout also won the bid for the drainage, first portion of the drainage on Joppa Road. And since the state has changed the way we do capital reserve fund request, where in years past we used to have in the budget, so we didn't have to come in front of the council. The state said you can't do that anymore, making your budget as transparent as possible. They want us now to come for those capital request withdrawals in front of the council. So this is the same company who's gonna be doing both projects. We're here to ask, and Kyle can explain it in more detail, for the funding to do that drainage project. Kyle.
Thank you, Paul. Good evening, council, and I'll try to keep this short out of respect for those who have to stay for the full meeting. So the Public Works Department, we have a lot of needs, drainage needs around town. And every year during CIP time, we present to the town council and to the planning board some of those needs. And we have kind of a chunk of money dedicated to that purpose through the CIP program. In this case, for this fiscal year, we have about $140,000 left of that money that we haven't spent yet. And as Paul noted, it's different than in past years. In previous years, it would have been in the actual budget. Now it only shows up in the CIP because of the way the state changed things. So it's a little different than how we've done it in past. The first and most important project that brings me here tonight primarily
as Paul noted, is the Joppa Road drainage project. It's a fairly small project that'll take care of a pretty big need. It's the project is on Joppa Road near Dairy Street, the intersection of Dairy Street. And the issue we experienced there is a pretty large puddle during summer storms. During the winter, when the ground is frozen, we've had a couple of these in the last couple of years, where we get big rainstorms and the water can't infiltrate into the ground at all. And not only does it affect the roadway, but it also affects a neighboring house. And we've helped sandbag that house a couple times in the last couple of years, and it's it's a really scary event. So that's the primary project we're focusing on tonight. We're also going to ask for the balance of that 140,000 and change to do some other projects, and I can get into as little or as much detail as you'd like me to. But I'll say briefly, the way we run the drainage program is we maintain what we call our drainage master plan. It's nothing more than an Excel spreadsheet, but as residents or businesses or through our own discovery makes us aware of projects, we put them on this list, and we have different scoring criteria that we do, such as public infrastructure damage, private infrastructure damage, environmental issues, things like that. And we score each and every project. And we utilize that list every year to develop the projects we're actually going to work on. We also utilize our paving program to determine some projects as well. And some of the ones that we're going to be doing this year are for that purpose. So we'd want to correct drainage this year before we pave the roads next year. So there's a lot of different ways that our drainage plans come together. In this case, timing worked out really well for us. As Paul mentioned, we had solicited bids for the roundabout project. We got a contractor from Loudon, New Hampshire as our contractor for the project. At the same time, we were soliciting bids from our usual local companies for this Joppa Road project. And because the FL Merrill was in town doing the roundabout, we said, hey, do you want to give us a number on this project? They never would have bid it, because they wouldn't be in proximity. But they did, and they actually gave us a really great price. The one stipulation was that they be able to address it before they start the roundabout work. So they want to jump on this right away. And so that's the reason we're here tonight to push that one through. The other projects I'll just touch on really quickly that we're hoping to accomplish this year. We won't know until we get the bids on them, and they're in various states of final design and preliminary design, but fairly quickly, we're looking to do a small improvement of existing metal pipe on Clay Street near Collins Ave. This is a section of pipe that was laid many years ago on a curve. It's in the curve of Clay Street. We don't lay drainage pipe on a curve, so we'll have to add a couple of catch basins as well to correct that problem. But it's a metal pipe, which we're all familiar with at this point. We've got a lot of that's rotting out. This is a fairly critical issue. The next one is we have three 36-inch pipes, so fairly good-sized culverts crossing South Babusick Lake Road down near the town line, kind of near Beebe Lane. We're proposing to replace those three pipes with two 48-inch pipes, and Don has done most of the engineering on that project, and we're getting fairly close to being able to solicit bids on that one. And then Thornton Road West, which is a little road, the very south end of town off of Tinker Road, and it's a dead-end road, fairly narrow, and it has three cross culverts that connect the two kind of brooks on both sides, the drinking water supplies. That's a troublesome area for us, again, because they're metal pipes, they're failing, they're going to fail at some point. And being a dead-end road and very narrow with no other public access, we need to get them before the culverts fail. And what we'll do is we'll work with the fire department to get coverage out there while we're doing the work, just to make sure, should anything happen to any of those properties, that we'd have coverage. So that I guess really quick overview of what we're hoping to accomplish this year. And what ultimately we're requesting is for the town council to approve the release of $140,650 from the Road Improvement Capital Reserve Fund for drainage improvements, road infrastructure capital reserve fund. Thank you, Paul.
Go ahead. What?
You're looking for a total of $180,445 for the,
No, we're looking
No,
for a total.
140,650.
The 140,650, the
the
39,795 for
39
job.
comes out of the 140?
Comes out of the 140.
Comes out of the 140?
It does,
My
yes.
apologies, thank you.
No, thank you, Lon.
So I guess I'm a little wondering why you're asking for the whole amount now when you don't have your bids or your numbers for the others. You're just asking for a blank check, if I could be so.
That's a fair way to say it. I guess it's in an effort to save the council's time. We certainly can come back
When
for
do you think
each
you would
project.
have better or more solid information on your other projects? Is this something that is gonna come in within the next 2 to 4 weeks, or is this something that's gonna happen throughout the summer and?
It'll be
maybe
throughout
into
the
the
summer. I
fall?
can't speak specifically to it because I don't know exactly where Dawn is at the process of each one.
So I guess I'd be a little more comfortable saying, let's give you the 40,000 you need for this project and ask you to be a little bit more specific about what you're gonna do with the rest of it.
Sure.
Is that okay with the council, or? Okay. So we'd be looking for a motion for $39,795. We can move by Lon, seconded by Barbara. We can still talk about it, but now we have a motion on the table ahead of lots of discussion.
Just do it as backwards.
I guess if we're gonna do it that way, what I would request, and maybe Paul can do some quick math for me, is to do 5% above that in case we have any contingencies that come up, boulders in the way of the path, or any other unexpected items that may come up in this project.
Because this specifically does not include ledge removal or bonds. Or
Correct.
all those things, so.
Yeah.
you're
It's a
thinking-
very detailed and limited scope bid.
So if we put in a 10% contingency or something like that.
That would
with
be
a-
great, yeah.
would
And
cover
obviously, if
you
we
and
don't
still-
spend it, it stays in the reserve fund.
Right, I understand that.
Yeah.
You're not gonna,
So is are you delegating Tom to get?
I want to see if he can come up with the number. I already got the number in my head.
we could go to 11 if
easy,
that
it's
makes you feel better.
$44,000. 5% is $42,000. So if you do, I would appreciate it not to exceed 45,000, use a round number of 40, not to exceed $45,000 for contingency.
Is that okay, Lon? Okay, so the motion is to release up to $45,000 for this project at Dairy and Joppa Road.
That will, thank you.
And you approve it as a second? Yes. Okay. Now, is there any other discussion? All right, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0.
Great, thank you so much.
And we'll be back through the summer. We'll try to combine 2 or 3 projects, so we're not doing a project at a time when we come back.
Okay, thanks.
Thanks, Scott.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna be done soon.
It's good because it's starting to get cold in here.
Shh.
You've got a jacket right there.
jacket on. I was
Going to
waiting.
be.
You've got a jacket.
Busting your chops.
Waiting.
Okay, number 5, acceptance of a donation to the Parks and Rec Department, submitted by Parks and Rec Director Matthew Kasparius. the town council to consider the acceptance and expenditure of a donation in the amount of $480 from the Bear Christensen Charitable Trust to the Parks and Rec Department to be used towards the Camp Scholarship Fund pursuant to RSA 31:95-B and Charter Article 8-15.
So moved, and a big thank you to the Bear Christensen.
Motion made by Lon Woods with appreciation, seconded by Andy. Is there any discussion?
It's very, they do this pretty often.
They do it,
Very kind,
it
yeah.
seems like annually when there's
Yeah.
the opportunity to have donations for the camp scholarships.
It's very
Last year
kind.
was probably the one that didn't do it, but anyway. I'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining, with our thanks to the Bear Christensen Fund. Very much appreciated. Item number 6, acceptance of donation to the Parks and Rec Department submitted by Parks and Rec Director Matthew Kasparius. The town council to consider the acceptance of a donation from Mosquito Joe of services of tick control with an estimated cost of $1,200 to the Merrimack Dog Park located at Wasserman Park pursuant to RSA 31:95-E and Charter Article 8-15.
So,
So
Go ahead.
moved.
Oh, yeah, no, I'll move it if that's,
Go
I
ahead.
thought you were gonna say something, Paul.
I just want to give some background on this. The treatment is basically a natural treatment. It's a spray from plant oils, cedar oil, and lemongrass, which ticks hate. It's safe for pets, it's safe for ponds, it's safe for vegetation, it's safe for the garden, which is out that way as well. So it's safe. That's one of my concerns, to make sure the tick spray was safe. The other thing is that it's going to be done early in the morning, and it's not just a one-time treatment.
Right.
He's coming doing it in the spring, he'll do it again in the fall. And no dogs will be allowed in the park 30 minutes prior to spraying to 30 minutes after spraying, or while he's spraying. So the dog park will be closed, and they're planning on doing it on a Saturday morning, like at 5:30 in the morning. So, but I just want to let everybody know, this is safe, this isn't a herbicide, this is a natural pesticide, this is a natural botanical. Botanical.
But
Botanical.
botanical.
It's a
Whatever
natural
that is,
botanical, for pets.
Very good.
Okay.
So I'll move the acceptance of the donation from Mosquito Joe with an estimated cost of $1,200 for the Merrimack Dog Park.
With canine appreciation.
Absolutely, with K-9.
Moved by Finley and seconded by
I'd be happy.
But-
Whoever, I'd be happy to.
Nancy Harrington.
And this, if I may.
She's laughing so hard.
It's 10 o'clock, that's what happens. I'd like to make sure we really thank Mosquito Joe, because this is the second time of recent that this has happened. We had the gentleman with the fences, and I've forgotten his name. But,
Mr. Fence.
Mr. Fence, who did that for the town, and this is just wonderful. We did have the fluff and dry for the police K-9 at one point. So
Oh, that's right, too.
Blowouts, yeah.
Blowouts, yeah.
Yes, and so,
Fluff and dry.
so anyhow, with thanks to Mosquito Joe,
That's a good.
All right, Nancy's out.
I'll be quiet.
Okay. Any other comments from the council at this point? We do appreciate Mosquito Joe and anybody making donations and contributions like this, and being able to control the ticks at the dog park is a great idea. If there's no other comments, we'll call for a vote. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Any opposed or abstaining? That passes 7-0-0. Minutes. I'm going to recommend we table the minutes because there are a lot of out of order stuff there. But I don't know if you've looked at them, but
Sorry, I had Becky reviewed them, but we can review them again.
well, they're printed up in the order that the agenda was, but the agenda was mixed
Messed
up
around a
quite a
little
bit in the beginning.
Yep.
And it doesn't say anywhere that Lon and I dropped off the phone, it just drops the votes from 7-0 to 5-0.
Okay, we'll go through
So-
them again tomorrow and have them for the June 10th meeting.
Okay, so we'll table the minutes till the June 10th meeting, just by agreement.
By agreement.
That brings us to comments from the press, or the public, or the council. Lon?
Yeah, I'd like to thank the council members for the well wishes and the concern expressed to me over the last couple of weeks due to a little procedure I had done. Everybody tells me that I should know that I'm doing okay, and glad to be with you.
We're glad to have you with us. Anybody else? Any other comments from the council? Bill's not here. Barbara, I'm sorry, go ahead.
I was just wondering, has any thought or discussion been made as to opening up town hall? As far as outside meetings, et cetera, from some of the groups that prior to the COVID shutdown had been using some of our meeting rooms, et cetera?
Yes, and the answer is yes. We're planning to have that discussion at our town council retreat to talk about how we see going forward with opening up. I've had several discussions with Paul, and we thought it would be best to just plan to bring it up as one of the first items under COVID-19 review in our
To
agenda, if
follow up,
that's okay.
O'Leary is waiting to hear from the town
Yeah.
on what we want to do with that kind of rentals and things like that, too. What criteria they should use.
Yes, and the criteria is changing
Hourly, daily?
daily, and the CDC is flip-flopping on mask and other things, so we will have that at the retreat.
Good
Okay,
idea, good idea.
any other questions, comments from the press, from the council?
Just a happy
Nancy
Memorial-
Murphy.
Go ahead, Nancy, go ahead.
Go ahead, it's okay.
I was just gonna say Happy Memorial Day to everyone, and please remember the reason behind this. There is last rest, is it, at 11 o'clock on Monday?
Oh, is there? Okay.
So, anybody in the community who wants to remember for reason for this Memorial Day weekend, please come and pay your respects. Thank you.
Nancy Murphy.
Thank you. I just, actually, and Barbara can probably help me out. I know that some community members were wondering about getting a better understanding of the committees in town, the commissions, and, we talk about needing people to serve on the boards and things, and some people just, wonder, because we see a lot of social media questions, and I know I was tagged in a post, and then Barbara was as well, and you actually had a really good suggestion. I don't know if that's when that should come up, but the question was, could something happen maybe during that fall thing? And I don't even remember what you said, but it was a great suggestion, so maybe you could talk about that.
Sure, actually,
That's also on the retreat. We moved
That's right.
community relations and communications up to include committees. That's one of the earlier agenda items on the retreat, so we'll be talking that at the retreat as well.
Thank you.
And I believe you've recently emailed out an initial agenda?
I
Was that just
emailed that
me
to
and
you and Finley,
Okay.
and,
So we're gonna take a look at that and get that sent out to you very soon. And then we'll be meeting again for the retreat on June 4th,
9 o'clock
9 o'clock.
at Buckley's Great Steaks.
Be there early if you wanted some coffee or something like that.
That's right,
Um,
yes.
And it'll go until we're just too tired to handle it anymore. Or 4 o'clock.
Are we having it facilitated?
I have reached out to the gentleman twice, and it's funny
Apparently not.
because I think Primex is back in the office, I'm not sure, but I got a reply now that he's not coming back until Monday or Tuesday. So I will talk to him and see if he's there. If he's not available, we'll have to do it like we've done last year, and.
I just thought it worked better with facilitator, because
It
we
does work well,
know
'cause
each
then
other
we-
so well that it tends to, it
Yeah.
can drift.
Yeah.
Drift.
No.
I just happened to notice it last time, that was all.
But due to COVID, a lot of these organizations that we do
Right.
use for this, they weren't in the office, so they weren't gonna do it.
That's right.
No, I understood.
So I'll try to get, if he can't do it, I'll try to see if somebody else can.
And I just want to say that I'm going to blame it on the tide tonight as to why I've been a little bit loose and digging holes for myself and things like that. So it's all the tide.
It's all the
Circulation.
That's right. It's-
That's right.
And
Anyway.
let it be noted that Finley complained about being cold, but he didn't use his jacket.
No, because it was close to the end, but now I'm freezing, so.
If there's no other comments from the council, then we're done with our agenda.
Motion to adjourn.
Motion by Nancy Harrington to adjourn, seconded by Barbara Healy. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any opposed or abstaining? We are adjourned. Thank you. 7:00.
At 10:14.